Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning to you. Welcome to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 10 o'clock. Great to have you with me, whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or your connected device. Thank you so much for joining us. An awful lot to talk about. If you do miss anything on the show, I promise you, it's another rip-roaring one, if I say so myself, mainly down to the guests and to your calls rather than me. But if you do miss anything, go to my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. You can hit subscribe and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to discuss that West Midlands Police Chief Craig Guilford clinging on to his job. We're going to discuss the almost 4 million people now to be denied a vote in May's local elections. Dozens of council elections being cancelled, mainly by Labour councils. I know, we're all shocked by that. Plus, Labour plan to rebrand Islamophobia as anti-Muslim hostility, according to a new report, is even more dangerous for our freedom of speech and debate. Plus, pothole repairs, as you've been hearing all morning on the morning show, pothole repairs must come with a 5-year guarantee, campaigners, as the AA reveals they had a whopping 613,000 call-outs in just a year. This is a huge epidemic. We'll be talking about all of that and, of course, lots of foreign affairs as well. And joining me for the chat, I'm delighted to say, is Philip Ingram, MBE, former Senior Military Intelligence Officer, always joins us on a Thursday. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Look, so much to get through.
Is there? There's nothing wrong.
Every day. Do you know what I love about this job? People say, well, you basically do the same thing every day. Oh, no, we really are. We have something new every single day to discuss.
It's been such a long year so far.
Yeah, it's the 15th. I mean, we're not even halfway. Well, just almost halfway through the January. I know. You can tell by looking out the window. Miserable again today. It was lovely yesterday. It was all chirpy yesterday. We've actually got a guest coming up, a Conservative MP, Nick Timothy, who has played an absolute blinder pushing this story forward and keeping it in the public eye. So we won't stay on it too long in this section because we've got a lot more to talk about. But the West Midlands Police Chief, Craig Guilford, is refusing to resign. He may well be gone by the end of the day, or certainly by tomorrow, even after a report, an independent report from the HMI Inspector for Constabulary, exposed basically lies and cover-ups by him and his senior officers about the Maccabi Tel Aviv fan ban, that massacre as Aston Villa in Birmingham last November. The Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, in unprecedented in the last 20 years or something, said she has no confidence in this Chief Constable, wants him to go, but she has no powers to sack him. I think a lot of us are quite surprised by that. This is under a law brought in some 25 years ago. They're going to change the law on that, which I think is very wise. Yep. The only person who's got the power to sack this guy is the local police and crime commissioner, who of course helped appoint the Met chief, the West Midlands chief. So I'm going to guess the pressure's going to be on him. He's a local Labour guy to do the right thing and get rid of him. And if he's got any sense, this Craig Guilford guy will fall on his sword and not make even more of a beep of himself than he already has. But shameless is the front page headline in the Daily Mail, and that is it is. His behaviour is shameless.
That sums it up completely. But it's across the board. It's chiefs of different organisations who may be let down by their staff, but if they're let down by the staff, that's then the culture at the top that's not checking. He is responsible to check and see what he's been briefed is accurate.
And if they've done something wrong, sack them.
Correct. And until people start taking responsibility, and he's symptomatic of what there is, but then, as I said last week, there's the defence chiefs, there's all the rest of it. Yeah. People need to start taking responsibility for what their staffs are doing if they're at the top.
And this is across the board in the public sector. We've got this issue, hasn't it?
And then he has sat down and misled Parliament, whether it be deliberate or by accident.
Let's call it, he's lied.
Yeah,
he lied about the reasons for the fan ban. He lied about the evidence. He lied about the lies. He covered it up. He lied. We need to use the correct terminology.
And therefore, that is misconduct in a public office.
Exactly.
He should be arrested and charged and prosecuted for misconduct in a public office. Yeah. Let's forget about going through the Police and Crime Commissioner and everything else. Let his own force nick him and do them.
Oh, absolutely. And also, I've been saying for weeks now, if they're willing to lie and cover up about this, what else are they willing to lie and cover up about?
Every crime they've investigated. That's the culture.
If I were a lawyer, right now, and I'm representing any. I would be going to every single person convicted while this guy's been chief constable and say we've got a strong case for appeal because we've already established that the top guy lies and his top
and
people lie.
The culture within his whole force is one of making stuff up.
But this is the thing. It's not just about this one guy, and it's not just about this one football match. This is about a police force, the public sector largely, but police who are supposed to police us with fear or favour, who are supposed to have a monopoly on violence in this country, the only people legally allowed to use violence other than in self-defence within the borders of this country, that they are not policing without fear or favour. They're doing the bidding of, let's face it, an Islamist extremist mob, militant Islamists, who in Birmingham basically said there's going to be trouble. Mafiosa style, it would be a shame if a load of those Jewish Israeli fans got attacked, wouldn't it? Wink, wink, what are you going to do about it? And they did their bidding. And instead of arresting the people making the threats and putting the police there to allow people to go about their law-abiding business, they basically banned Israelis, banned Jews from attending that football match. This is unacceptable. This is beyond anything that we should allow to happen in this country.
Yeah, unacceptable is not strong enough to describe it.
I can't use some of the language I want to use.
Yeah, and the fact that he's trying to defend himself instead of going, yep, you've caught me, that's it, I'm gone.
He doesn't even think he's done anything wrong.
No, but he should be saying, as to bring confidence back into the force, my behaviour doesn't reflect the professional capability of us. And police officers at the lowest level in West Midlands, and I live in the West Midlands, are fantastic individuals. They do a fantastic job. They've looked after me whenever I've needed to call them, very, very well indeed. But as you get up the chain in every government organisation, you find more and more of this.
You could possibly offer is, I've been under pressure, I've been blackmailed by these people, and they threaten me and my family or something. That's the only, literally, that's the only defence.
And it wouldn't surprise me if that's happened.
It'll be veiled. It'll be thinly veiled. I'm sorry,
Oh, I'd say
if one of the people who sat on the panel to appoint this guy, as we now know, as chief executive of Green Lane Mosque, where they have had preachers turn up who say basically not really an issue, as a last resort, to physically assault your wife because she does something wrong, leaving the house without your permission. I mean, my husband would like me to leave the house more often.
He's given you infinite permission.
Go. But I mean, it's just extraordinary. I'd love to hear your reaction to this story, because this blows my mind that even that it took this long for there to be a loss of confidence by the Home Secretary. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate, and text obviously cost one standard network rate message. Again, I don't think this is just about Maccabi Tel Aviv. I don't think this is just about Craig Guildford. I don't think it's just about Birmingham. I think this is a nationwide problem where the police are under the thumb doing the bidding of certain so-called community leaders, self-appointed, and we have a serious problem of two-tier policing, and it is simple as that. Let's also talk about two-tier local elections, as most of the main party leaders head up to Scotland today to start. They're really going for their campaign in Scotland, because we've got elections in May, not just in Scottish Parliament, but also the Welsh Assembly. We've also got local elections across the country. Not as many as you might expect, though. We've already seen a number that have been postponed. It was due to happen. We've now got a load more. Almost 4 million people are going to be denied the vote in May who should have had a chance to vote their local elections. The government is expected to cancel at least 27 council elections. Hundreds of councillors basically will be in office. A number of them will be in office for 7 years without being accountable to the people. And basically this is extraordinary, an obscure clause in the 2000 Local Government Act, which gives ministers the power to delay votes, in extremis, if there is any reason. Okay, war. During wartime, fair enough. Let's not, we've got stuff to do, people. Pandemic. Now, I don't even think it was acceptable that it was the elections were cancelled during the pandemic. There's no reason why. I mean, the American presidential election went ahead during lockdowns. They managed to do it. So they don't allow the election to be moved or to be delayed. That's a very good thing, I think. But the idea that we're having a reorganisation and the bureaucracies can't really handle it, and so we're not sure we can get our act together to divert resources for election. I'm really sorry. Local elections are not to be decided by incompetent bureaucrats or incumbent councillors. It's mostly Labour councils that have gone, yeah, we'll do this. I think one Tory, seven more Labour councils expect to join the 20 already doing this. some are going to cancel, I say, elections second year running. This is an absolute outrage. I mean, this is proper gerrymandering, vote fixing, delaying of accountability and democracy, basically for the benefit of the Labour Party. It's outrage.
Local government minister should resign over this as well, because it does not take an awful lot to reorganise the councils. You look at the end of the Second World War, they reorganised a government, cross-party government into political parties again, and ran a general election within months of the end of the Second World War.
I mean,
there is no excuse for this whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, this thing, I mean, just full stop. There you are, done. Yeah. That's the issue, isn't it? Can we talk international affairs? Donald Trump says the killings in Iran have stopped. He's told that they have stopped. Given that we actually difficult to get quite a lot of information, I'm sure the Americans and the Israelis
have a good idea.
They're getting a lot of what's going on. We know that there was supposed to be that first execution of somebody, supposedly tried, not in any meaningful sense in our country tried. And the Tehran apparently said there will be no execution. They have no plans for executions. We've got this message from the American president that he was going to take action and send help, and then people are saying, well, I mean, it could be up to 20,000 people have already been killed, thousands, tens of thousands more threatened with execution. When are you going to bring that help? It's going to be too little, too late at this rate. We've seen embassies closed. We've got travel warnings, a lot of build-up of resources, military resources in that region. Do you think he is going to send any help? And do you think it's true what he claims, that he's been told reliably there are no more shootings? Or is that just because people are too scared to go onto the street now?
Well, no, there are people still on the street. I think the number of killings probably has gone down, but that's, you get waxing and waning in any protest that's going on. And I think what Donald Trump's doing here is he's giving the Iranian regime an off-ramp.
Okay.
When it comes to the threats that go in. So he's gone in with a very, very big stick. He's wielded it.
And with credibility,
exactly,
because of Venezuela.
With real credibility and all the rest of it. And now he's saying, you seem to be cooperating. Thank you, I'm going to put the stick by my side. But at the same time, we're seeing him closing the embassy. We're seeing UK closing their embassy. We're seeing them evacuating troops from the military base in Qatar. We're seeing a build-up of military capability around the area. So he's getting an even bigger stick behind his back, ready to go if he needs to use it.
And this is proper international diplomacy, which is speak softly but carry a big stick. So the threat is credible.
Yes.
What could he actually do to help those protesters? Because that's what we've been trying to debate all week.
That's the real difficulty. From a military perspective, it's extremely difficult, because what it could do is stimulate an even greater response against the very people he's trying to protect. He could do a range of things. He could do something that's a demonstration. He could, attack the nuclear facilities again, which have been destroyed.
How does that?
It doesn't. It's a demonstration. It's saying, I've got capability. Your air defences can't protect you against it. I can hit you as individuals.
Yeah.
He could go for Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps headquarters or military capabilities. He could sink a couple of their ships in their ports. He could ultimately decide that he wants to take the Grand Ayatollah out and to. I mean,
I think that because other than the fact who do you get after that, it's likely they're just as much. They're all religious lunatics.
Exactly, and we're assuming that the Shah of Iran or his successor is sitting waiting outside to go in and form the government. But we're
bearing in mind I don't think that's the Great White Hope, is it? And we were talking about the Crown Prince wasn't in power; he left in '79, but along with his dad. But at the end of the day, we're talking about a nasty autocratic regime. It's not like not as bad as the mullahs, but come on.
But one that provided a completely secular environment which didn't oppress women and allowed
didn't oppress women, but dissent. It wasn't as bad as what they've got now.
And remember, in the 60s and 70s, lots of other countries around the world were exactly like that. So the world has moved on as well as everything else. But we can't assume automatically that that's what's going to take over.
But also the key thing here is that when Iran says, OK, we're not going to have executions, well, A, we won't be told. Normally what happens in Iran, this is the extraordinary thing, is people are executed. Or if they're shot, parents and family members, to get their bodies back, they've been told you've got to have a private burial, otherwise it's going to be a group burial. You won't even know where your kid is. And they have to pay for the bullet that shot them.
Of course they do.
I mean,
yes.
This is so sick.
Yeah, 55 pence. They're not expensive.
Is that what they charge them?
I don't know.
But I suppose, but the key thing is, I mean, with inflation, it could be like 4 million, you know, in the local currency.
No, they'll just do it quietly. That's the thing. People will just disappear, and that's what happens in that regime.
But this is the issue: is they could do anything. And anyway, okay, so they don't execute. You know, this 26-year-old shopkeeper who was due to be executed first. So they don't execute him. They just keep him in prison for the rest of his life and torture him. Oh, okay, we're fine with that.
Yeah, but the other thing is about toppling a government. You know, the West does not have a good history when it comes to toppling governments in the Middle East. You know,
a lot of our audience.
You look at Saddam Hussein, and you know he was a very, very, very nasty piece of work, but he kept an awful lot of other very, very nasty and
same reason we keep the Saudis in charge, because what is the alternative? Look, we've got a guest coming up, say Nick Timothy. So he's been looking down, sort of just checking when he's going to be available. Just one more topic I want to bring to you, and it's not the biggest thing in the world, but Elon Musk has clearly had a big climb down on X over sexualised AI deepfakes after a big backlash and a threat to close down X. Oh, that was an unnecessary threat to make him very sinister from his government. But as someone who's had an AI deepfake of me put into a bikini, although weirdly not my body, not my hands, which is weird, and not my face, but clearly a shot that I put on. It's unacceptable. It's happening to a lot of young women. It's clearly done. It's not done as in the way people do it, like say to Keir Starmer. They do it as a joke. You're mocking politicians. Different. It's done to denigrate and to humiliate women and to sexualise women. I tell you what, they say they're going to stop it. I was able, not online, but using Grok on my phone, I was able to create an image of Craig Guilford, the West Midlands Chief Constable, in a bikini this morning.
Excellent.
Although the first time I said put the Westminster Chief Constable into a bikini, and they put some woman I've never seen before in my life into the bikini, and then I said that's not Craig Guilford. I mean, AI is rubbish.
Yeah, it is.
But I've got an image. I'm not going to put it on there because I don't think people should be sharing fake images of people that are sexualised.
The good thing about this is the people that are going to deal with inappropriate content on platforms are the platform providers.
Yeah.
Not governments, not legislation, and therefore forcing Musk to do this by threatening him with legislation is a good way of actually getting them to wake up and realise that they have responsibility.
My main thing is that it's all just sort of tacky sort of teenage boy thing, which has been allowed by him. But also, I mean,
like Starmer's comments in Parliament.
Yeah, it was disgusting yesterday. But the commentary stuff was just so tacky. The free speech people arguing like, oh, this is outrageous.
No,
it's like, guys, this is not the hill to die on. Anyway, 10:19 is the time. Up next, we're going to be hearing from the Conservative MP Nick Timothy, who has been keeping the story on the front page, the West Midlands Police Chief and his extraordinary lies and cover-ups over the decision to ban the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans last November. Does he think that police chief will survive? How can we get rid of him? We'll talk to him about that. Up next, this is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:22 is the time. Now, normally at this time we are taking your calls, and I promise we will get to your calls, but I do want to talk to this next guest about this extraordinary story about the West Midlands police chief, who's basically been told he has the Home Secretary has no confidence in him. He wants him to go. She has no powers to sack him. The only person who does is the Police and Crime Commissioner. He's one of the people who appointed him. He's saying, he's digging in and saying he won't go. But the man who's been really keeping this at the forefront of the news for goodness knows how many weeks now is Nick Timothy. He's a Conservative MP for West Suffolk, and I'm delighted to say joins us now. Good morning to you, Nick.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. A lot of people, I think, early on just thought this whole story, when it first emerged, there was this ban on fans from Maccabi Tel Aviv joining, were going to the stadium in Birmingham to watch that match against Aston Villa in early November. There was a story about football, or a story about, Israeli fans, or a story even just about Birmingham. But this is much bigger than this, isn't it?
Oh, it's much bigger. And I've had people say, why do you care so much about foreign football fans, some of whom actually, have chanted offensive things and things like that.
Yep.
It's not about that at all. It's about whether we can trust our police to do their jobs without fear or favour.
Yep.
And I think we found out that in this particular force we can't. But it's also about who has power in modern multicultural Britain, because actually there is growing evidence, especially in the criminal justice system, whether it's the police, the prosecutors, the prisons and others, that the forces of the state are doing the bidding of Islamists and extremists. And I think sometimes in the name of community relations and sometimes in the name of public order, they are taking very dangerous shortcuts, and they are basically putting themselves at the service of extremists who want to destroy the kind of society we have.
And this isn't all the first time we've had this. We've had, the Batley Grammar School teacher still in hiding years after death threats made to him. As far as we're aware, not a single person has been arrested or charged with any crime. We saw, the little lad with a Quran and getting scuffed at school. Police chief, instead of arresting the people making death threats to him and his family, took the mum, got her to wear a hijab, to go and sort of grovel and beg for her family's safety in front of local Muslim community leaders. I mean, we saw during the Southport riots, people who were threatening, asylum seekers in hotels or attacking the police with bricks and weapons, quite rightly arrested, whereas local Muslims, armed to the teeth, were told, "Oh, could you take your weapons back to the mosque, please?" I'm not joking. That's literally what they were told to do by the police. I mean, this can't carry on.
No, we need a complete clear out. So, this chief constable needs to go. He should be accountable for the disgrace over which he's presided. But actually, there are serious questions about the other senior police officers in West Midlands who took part in this conspiracy. That's exactly what it was. The Police and Crime Commissioner in the West Midlands has been completely invisible and failed to do his job. There should be accountability for him. But there are actually also questions for the rest of the policing institutions. So for a while, West Midlands Police prayed in aid the UK Football Policing Unit, which is part of the National Police Chiefs Council, saying that they'd peer-reviewed their work and said that it was first-rate. Actually, it turned out that wasn't true.
I'd love to see what third-rate was.
Well, it turned out that wasn't true. The UK Football Policing Unit actually said that away fans could attend in their work, but the point is that this is the police marking one another's homework in a way that is not transparent at all.
Yeah.
And there isn't sufficient accountability. But there are also serious questions for the government, because we know Shabana Mahmood was told that a ban was being actively considered at least 8 days before. Her officials were told earlier than that, before the decision was announced. Yeah. And she did absolutely nothing about it. She's hiding behind the excuse of operational independence. But in public order situations, there is a role for Home Office ministers and police and crime commissioners to work with the police to interrogate their plans, to make sure the intelligence is right, and to have a say over how something like this will be handled.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. The job of the police is not just to catch criminals or to, prevent crime over the street. It's also about allowing people to go about their lawful business. Your right to walk along the pavement, unaccosted. women, be on public transport without getting sexually assaulted. I mean, you've got right to, you go about your life. And whether you're a foreign football fan or a British football fan, or you're Jewish or not Jewish, you're right to go to a football match legally and without the police basically saying you can't go because there might be violence against you. Instead of banning the victim, they're basically enabling the perpetrator, the threatener. Are we aware that anybody who passed on these threats or made these threats, which the police were acting on, has actually been arrested?
Well, this is one of the outstanding questions. So just to remind everybody, the police did two catastrophically terrible things at the heart of all of this. Firstly, they suppressed intelligence that they had as early as the 5th of September last year that said that local Islamists were planning to arm themselves so that they could attack the Israeli supporters. They kept that information secret. But then they fabricated intelligence supposedly given to them by the Dutch authorities. The Dutch authorities have said this is total nonsense. That said that in a match between Ajax and Maccabi Tel Aviv in 2024, the Israeli fans were uniquely violent, military-trained thugs who were going into Muslim areas and beating up civilians. None of that was true. So that's at the heart of it all. But on this question of the people who were arming themselves and planning to attack the Israelis, we don't know whether the police even pursued that line of inquiry because they suppressed it in the intelligence report. What did they do in terms of their day-to-day job of going and finding those people?
But they also, on the night of the match, actually going ahead with, we didn't have to be a fan ban in the end, did there? Because Maccabi said, okay, we just won't take up our allotment, a lot of tickets. But there were a lot of people who attended, who wanted to make a clear statement that they could go anywhere they darn well please in a free country. And we know that on the night, despite the police saying it was all very peaceful on the night, the police logs themselves recorded that there were gangs of up to 100 youths at a time, Asian youths, they said, masked, looking for, Maccabi fans to attack them, as had happened exactly the same in Amsterdam when there was what was literally called in WhatsApp groups by Islamist extremists a Jew hunt.
Yes, and if you look at those police logs, it's quite clear that this was a highly organised attempt to monitor the Israeli team because they were hoping to disrupt the match itself and potentially do harm to the players. Yeah. And I was actually, so I'm an Aston Villa supporter. I was at the match that evening, and I recorded it and put it online at the time. But I went and spoke to some of the protesters who were, hate-filled, rabidly anti-Semitic people, I think, and they actually, at one point when I was talking to them, they called over the police and said, officer, take this dog away.
Wow.
And the police didn't go up to them and say, you need to take the temperature down. They called me over and said, you need to leave.
Did you at this point say, do you know who I am?
I didn't quite say that. I did explain that I was a member of Parliament and that I was there to understand what was going on so I could communicate with the country about what it is that we're up against. But they wanted me to leave because they thought I was...
You were causing trouble by asking questions.
Just by asking people why they were there.
Yeah, and again, we've seen this with the hate marches, the supposedly pro-Palestinian, actually anti-Jew marches that we see in London. Just finally, I must ask you, you talk about, accountability and responsibility. Do we need more on this case? I mean, again, we need change across the board, not just at Westminster Police, and I don't think it's even just this one chief constable. But do we actually also need, though, this man and indeed other police officers, part of this conspiracy, to be prosecuted themselves for misconduct in public office?
Well, that is something that is actually being considered by several people, and it was raised in Parliament yesterday that the Chief Constable could be prosecuted for that offence. But the starting point is the Chief Constable needs to be sacked. Now, the Police and Crime Commissioner is refusing to do that at the moment.
Well, so far, yes.
There are obviously questions about the Police and Crime Commissioner's own relationship with Islamists and problem mosques in the West Midlands. But we need to actually not let the Home Secretary off the hook here, because she says she has no power to do anything. But if you read Section 40 of the Police Act 1996, she has the power to direct the Police and Crime Commissioner to take specified measures to remedy the problem when a force is failing in whole or part.
Yeah.
Which I think is pretty clear.
Yes, absolutely. Nick Timothy, you've done fantastic work on this. I really appreciate you joining us today. Conservative MP for West Suffolk, Nick Timothy, thank you indeed. 10:32 is the time. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all this. 0344 499 1000. Again, as Nick Timothy says, and we've been saying along, this is not just about some fans of one particular football team. This is not just about Birmingham. It's not just about this Chief Constable. This is a story about the police failing to police our streets without fear or favour. This is about them basically doing the bidding of Islamist extremists to just one community and basically curtailing the rights of other people to basically keep order because of those threats. If you don't think that is terrifying and sinister, frankly, you ain't been paying attention enough. We're going to talk more about this. We're going to talk more also about those local elections being cancelled across the country coming up next. Give us a call to have your say on all the big topics. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
The home of common sense. Philip Ingram is still with me. He's former senior military intelligence officer. I just want to get your response to what Nick Timothy had to say before we go to our next guest, already waiting on the line.
I've shocked it. You summed it up when you said without fear or favour. The police were in fear of local vigilantes and local groups, yep. And they then favoured them instead of prosecuting them for criminal behaviour. Yep. We have lost it, and I'm afraid if the government can't take control, then the people are going to have to take control back from the government. And this ties in with the cancelling of local elections. We're not being allowed to democratically take control back again. Yep. The government's in a very sticky wicket.
They really, really are on this. And again, I don't think Shabana Mahmood has covered herself in glory on this. And she's talking tough. But again, as Nick Timothy points out, there's actually a lot more she can do. Well, let's talk to someone else about this, a Conservative Shadow Attorney General, Lord Wolfson KC, who joins us to talk about this as well. Lord Wolfson, thank you for joining us.
Morning.
I want to talk to you also about the local elections, but in terms of the conversation we just had about the Chief Constable of West Midlands Police, do you believe that the Home Secretary could do more, and actually she does have the power to get this guy out of office, even if he's basically clinging on with every fingernail?
Well, of course, she shouldn't have to do it, because anybody with a shred of integrity would resign at this point.
Anyone with a shred of integrity wouldn't have banned Jews from a football match because Islamist extremists said they'd attack them.
This is the problem. I mean, he started off by, quote, solving a problem by removing the people who were the potential victims of an attack, rather than dealing with the potential attackers. Yeah. And what he then did, having identified the wrong target, he essentially did that thing where instead of having a target and then shooting the arrows, he shot the arrows, i.e. he predetermined what his answer was, and then he drew the target around it. And that's why he ended up lying about his involvement and contacts with the Jewish community, lying about what the Dutch police told him, lying to Parliament, continually changing his story. Now, as to whether the Home Secretary has got the power to dismiss him, as Nick Timothy, and I must say Nick Timothy has done an enormous amount of work in this area, and, you know, hats off to him for everything that he's done. He rightly points to Section 40, which says that the Home Secretary can require various measures to be taken. There is an interesting for which read perhaps expensive legal point as to whether that would include the actual dismissal of the chief constable.
Yeah.
But what I would say is this: there are times in law and in politics where you have to take a decision and, so to speak, allow the person to challenge it. I mean, let's just see if he challenges it, because of course none of this should be necessary, because if she was to dismiss him and the PCC, as he ought to do, ratifies that in any event, it would become a moot point and would become redundant. So I hope that the Home Secretary acts as strongly as she's spoken. I don't want to make this too much of a party political issue.
No, and it shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be. Frankly, it's too important to be a party political issue. And so I would encourage the Home Secretary to go further. But really what should happen is, one, the Chief Constable should have the nous and integrity to resign. And secondly, the Police and Crime Commissioner shouldn't be taking weeks and weeks even to hold a meeting to discuss what his position ought to be.
No, he said, yes, he said he was going to look into it and go through the due process and meet at the end of January. For goodness sake, I'm pretty sure this guy's available, apart from as he's cooking up more completely fake evidence. It is absolutely extraordinary. It's still ongoing. Do you think that Craig Guildford could possibly face misconduct prosecution?
Misconduct in public office is a relatively high test, but it was raised in Parliament yesterday. I mean, what I would say is that it obviously depends on the facts. It's certainly not something which is impossible, and certainly something which, frankly, I think ought to be looked at. This issue, really, it goes beyond Birmingham, it goes beyond Maccabi Tel Aviv. It is fundamental to our society that we can all rely on the police to act without fear or favour. And, you know, when we were all growing up, that was just taken for granted. I mean, there are huge parts of the world where it's not taken for granted. But one of the undoubted pleasures about living in the United Kingdom has been that things like this, i.e. the police are independent, they act without fear and favour, they're not bribed, they're not corrupted. These were taken as read, and on the vanishingly few occasions where people were found to be rotten apples in a barrel, they were slung out of the barrel. And, you know, if Chief Constable Guildford doesn't sling himself out of the barrel, he ought to be slung out of it pronto.
The trouble is, and I think a lot of people feel now, is the barrel that's now rotten, and there are police, and much of our public service sector is captured by sort of some, I can never quite work it out, because there's this weird alignment between sort of wokery and also kowtowing to Islamist extremism. And again, this is very different from you know, wanting to protect, you know, the ordinary Muslims going about their day-to-day business and wanting their views represented by, well, that's completely by the by. And I can even see this in, you know, the Today programme, the flagship news programme of the BBC. Barely touched this story this morning. The Home Secretary saying she has no confidence in the chief police officer of our second city. Barely merited a mention. That tells you something is going on.
There are two things which go on, and of course history shows us that these two things always go together. First, you have normally a very small number of people who actively want to disrupt the system. Secondly, and this is the problem, you have a much larger number of people who don't stand up to that small number of people, who just think it's easier to look the other way. It's easier not to make a fuss. It's easier just to let this one go. And I am sure that there are tens and hundreds of people in West Midlands Police who fundamentally disagreed with what the Chief Constable was doing, knew it was wrong, but either didn't speak out or didn't feel they were able to speak out. And it's important that we have a society where people do speak out, because I always say this, the silent majority in the United Kingdom is both good and it's bad. It's good because a silent majority in this country is strongly in favour of tolerance, is in favour of protecting all our communities, is in favour of treating everybody equally under the law. That's the good side. The problem with the silent majority is that it's silent. And sometimes I wish that the silent majority was a little more vocal in defending the values which need to be defended.
Absolutely. They disappear very quickly if they're not defended. Talking of silence, a lot of people are being silenced at the next local elections. We've got regional elections, elections across the board. We've got Welsh Assembly, Scottish Parliament. I know a lot of party leaders are up in Scotland today. Big launches there ahead of those elections. But a lot of more local elections were supposed to be taking place in May than actually are. We've got almost 4 million people not going to get a vote because the government basically said, to the local councils, look, you're reorganising. We're going to you're changing district councils and county councils and the like. So if you don't feel you can do it in time and it's all going to be a bit difficult, cost too much, used up too much of your energy, you can delay your elections by another year. And what a surprise, mostly Labour councils have said, yes, we'll do that. Should this be allowed? Is there a possible legal challenge to this? The idea that sitting councillors can decide whether or not they stand for election or not?
I think it's difficult for there to be a legal challenge, as I'm sure people are looking at it. But there should be, and I think is, a very strong political challenge. The government's argument is essentially a pragmatic argument. These councils are going to be reorganised in a couple of years. What's the point, therefore, in having a vote if they're all going to be reorganised afterwards? My problem with that is that it's the thin end of a very dangerous wedge. The right to vote is absolutely fundamental. People are on the streets in Iran as we speak, campaigning for things which we take for granted. I mean, if I may say respectfully, Julia, you and I are old enough, if I may say, to remember the first votes in South Africa, where people queued for hours. Do you remember? It was incredibly moving. We take the right to vote for granted.
Do you know, I never do this. I never miss a local election. For me, especially women, if you see in our lifetime, our grandmother's lifetime, they didn't have the right to vote. For God's sake, go out and vote.
I couldn't agree with you more. When I say we, I mean the problem is in the United Kingdom, you look at the turnouts. In general elections, the turnouts have gone down significantly. In local elections, they're even lower. Yeah. But we're not going to improve turnout. We're not going to improve people's participation in politics, which is absolutely critical, by simply cancelling elections on pragmatic grounds. And let me be clear, even if all the people who are being denied a vote would go out and vote Labour, for example, I would still be in favour of the elections happening. Yeah. My concern, and I think the real threat to democracy in this country, is the apathy. It doesn't matter, voting isn't important. I would rather, this may sound heretical, but I would rather people went out and voted for parties other than mine than that they didn't vote, or even worse, elections were cancelled.
100%.
So I very much regret this decision.
100% with you on that. Just finally, briefly, if you would, there's a lot to cover. We've got the government's plan to basically give a definition of Islamophobia. And it's now been changed into hatred of Muslims, hostility towards Muslims. Think tank report out today saying that this could actually be even more of a sort of dampener on people's freedom of speech and their ability to discuss their concerns about a particular religion along with any other religions. What do you say to that?
Well, I think the government ought to read this report from Policy Exchange extremely carefully. Because Baroness Falconer, who's written a piece in the Times today, knows what she's talking about. She's the former head of the Equality and Human Rights Commission. And she makes the point that if you have a legal test of hostility, that's not a test normally used in law. And the problem is, she gives an example about what she said about the grooming gangs scandal. And she says how her own words, and she's hardly a radical, if I may say. I mean, she was head of the EHRC. How what she said could be caught by this new definition. And it seems to me that any definition which catches speech like that, which would dampen down or circumscribe discussion about issues like that, is obviously a definition which is extremely problematic. My view, frankly, is that all of this is a solution in search of a problem. I haven't yet had explained to me very clearly precisely what it is that is lawful now, which the government wants to make unlawful.
Yeah,
that is the central question, and I haven't had that explained to me.
Very interesting. I'm sure we're going to talk more about that subject in the future. David Lord Wolfson, KC Shadow Attorney General, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to take a quick call right now before we go to a break, because we lost an opportunity for calls about 20 past 10. Let's go to Michael, who's called us on 0344 499 1000, talk about the Maccabee case. Now, Michael, you're actually in Birmingham yourself, aren't you?
Yeah, without doxing myself, I'm in Jeff Phillips's constituency. She hasn't said a dicky bird, by the way. And my nearest pub is that place where the riot took place, where the West Midlands police didn't show.
Yeah.
And the rioters were told. So
when people were barricaded inside.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's my nearest pub.
Yeah.
But what the impact that has, and people should talk about the impact upon residents. I no longer feel safe here.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave Birmingham because I feel there's a favoured section of the community who, if they attacked me, they wouldn't be investigated properly, justice wouldn't be done, and it might even be turned against me. And that is the bottom line. Let's not forget there's a couple of million people live in this area, and we don't feel safe. And Shabana Mahmood, your previous people were right. Don't let her off the hook. She has powers to intervene. But also, another thing about Ms Mahmood, she's a Birmingham MP whose constituency covers the location of Birmingham Police Headquarters. So couldn't she come from the point of view saying, oh, are all my constituents safe? Yeah. Because the constituents she really cares about are safe, but the rest of us aren't. Frankly.
Very good point. Michael, I completely understand your sentiment there. Thank you so much for your call. Going to take a quick break. Up next, we're going to talk about something completely different. The pothole pandemic. That's coming up next. This is Talk.
Every Monday to Wednesday, midnight until 1, it is Talkback.
Such a shortage of housing. You've got landlords, right, have taken that on board, and it's an absolute disgrace.
Your stories, your opinions, it is your chance to have your say. So they're literally just being rented out as hotels, basically.
Yeah, rent a load of hotels.
Well, that has really shone a light for me.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back. This is Talk, the home of common sense. 10:50 is the time. We have a pothole pandemic. Pothole repairs basically should come with a 5-year guarantee, say campaigners. The AA revealed that they've had more than 600,000 call-outs in just a year. Well, let's talk to the president of the AA right now, Edmund King, about this. Good morning to you, Edmund.
Good morning, Julia.
I mean, another day, another week, another conversation about potholes. This is an obsession for an awful lot of people, but we understand why.
Well, indeed we do. When we survey drivers, 96% say potholes are the number one issue. But it's not just drivers, it's also those on two wheels, cyclists, motorcyclists, and indeed pedestrians are affected. So we've got a pothole partnership with British Cycling, with the National Motorcyclists Council, and indeed JCB to put pressure on government and local authorities about potholes. And what it's about, it's not just about the money. In fact, there is more money going into road maintenance. It is about more permanent repairs, and that's that's the issue.
And it's basically, if they are getting repaired, it's just a little sort of tentative pretend effort. I mean, certainly what I noticed in my local area, you get, the water company comes, and then the what was it, the electric company comes, or someone else comes, and they dig it up, and then there's a patch, and then there's a hole that comes near it, and then someone maybe 6 months later might come and repair that, and you end up with this sort of patchwork quilt of holes. But of course, it means that the road is just no longer as solid and as safe as it used to be.
No, that's absolutely right. So where you've got that kind of channel where the water company or whatever has dug it up, if it's not filled in properly, you get cracks along the edges, you get water going into it, the water freezes, expands, and it gets another pothole. And in the end, that's a false economy, just doing it that way, because it's not permanent. Whereas, if you use some of the machines you're showing on the film there to fill a pothole properly, it will last 4 times longer, and it costs half as much. So
why don't they do it then? Is it just because it comes out of that particular budget at that time? Because let's face it, one of the things we've all noticed is how suddenly there are a load of roadworks that happen in the sort of 2 months before the end of the tax year. And it's almost like these little council departments, they're running their fiefdoms going, got to spend my budget, otherwise I'll lose it. But they seem to have the money for a load of absolute nonsense resurfacing, or some more road bumps here and all this, but they don't have the money apparently to do the things that we actually want them to do.
Well, yeah, no, I think that's right. But one of the things the government is doing, they announced at the weekend this traffic light system for local authorities, and they actually rate them red, amber, and green, and they withhold 25% of the funding till the local highway authority can prove that they're doing it right. And I think actually that will help in the longer term.
Because residents can vote, and the council taxpayers can say, well, hold on a minute, you're not doing as good a job as the neighbouring councils, so what's your excuse?
No, absolutely right. And those in the red, the government don't just leave them alone. There are advisors that can go in and talk to them about best practice and stuff.
But aren't a lot of these councils spending more on payouts to drivers and injuries? I mean, again, I think cyclists are the biggest risk, aren't they? Massive big hole, they need to suddenly move out, and then there's a car or a lorry behind them. But of course none of them have lights on, they're wearing black so we can't see them, usual form. But they're paying out more than on not filling in the potholes than it would cost them to fill the sodding things in the first place.
Well, indeed. So you get into this vicious circle that you've got potholes, people get their cars damaged, they get injured, they claim against the local authority, and then that money's going into compensation, not going into the potholes. Crazy. But the other broader thing is the money isn't actually ring-fenced for road maintenance. So the government in the budget talked about 7.3 billion over 4 years. That sounds great if it's being spent on the roads, but not all local authorities spend their allocation on the roads. So that's something also that needs to be addressed, because it is the number one issue for drivers. And, we've seen in your clips, rubber ducks in potholes, daffodils in potholes. Even on the AA app now, we've got a pothole dodger game. It's become that extreme that people are somewhat obsessed with potholes.
This is embarrassing. I remember many, many years ago travelling in Cambodia, and genuinely, I looked, how long the journey would be. It was before we had, apps and things on our phones, and we were told, it's X number of miles, and I'm like, okay, so that'll be about an hour. They went, no, it'll take us about 6 hours, because the roads were so potholed, and it was just basically a dirt track, even though it was like a major road between Vietnam and Cambodia. I mean, it was properly basic. And when I say potholes, I mean, if you ain't seen anything yet, I mean, properly, I mean, just about half of the road might sometimes be passable. It was extraordinary. We're a first world country. It is embarrassing that people can't just drive along. I mean, often main arterial routes in major cities, not just sort of a country lane that only a few people might use in the middle of nowhere. But, people coming to our country, tourists, business people. I mean, it's embarrassing, isn't it?
Well, no, but it is, Julia. I was in France a couple of times last year, and very local roads, sea roads, vineyard areas in Loire, Burgundy,
very
whatever.
nice holiday,
very nice. And cycled around the vineyards and whatever. And I thought, I'm going to be on small local roads. It'll be pretty bumpy. It was even. I didn't spot a pothole. So
it's possible.
And France, is a bigger country, and if they can get it right, we can certainly get it right.
And their council staff have a 3-hour lunch break every day as well. Edmund King, President of the AA, thank you very much indeed for joining us. I like that. A little bit of cycling round the vineyards.
Sounds
I prefer just someone to drive me, not going to lie. But anyway, Philip Ingram, listening to all of that, it is frustrating and it is an embarrassment to our country. But we're told the backlog is in the tens of billions of pounds worth of repairs.
It is. I'm looking at it from a slightly different perspective. Councils or companies that fill the potholes and provide a 5-year guarantee. Well, they've got a license to print money at the minute because they do something that's a half-baked repair, knowing full well fail next year. They're going to get the contract to fill it in next year.
Exactly. There's no incentive.
So we should be doing this with all work that councils are contracting, and we should have something in place to have penalties in.
You should do it with your own builder at home.
Oh. Don't.
No, but he's having building work done. I like riling him about it off air. No, but I mean, this is the thing. Do you guarantee the work you are doing? But again, we've also got the whole thing. All our roads have been done. My road was dug up, I think, solidly for 6 months last year. I spent 3 months of this year, literally every week, trying to get a hole filled in that had been there for 6 months. When I finally got someone from the council to come over and look at it, and we were using 2 parking spaces, which we needed, but massive big hole, and they said, that's been there for a long time. There are weeds in it. I went, I know. I've been calling you about it.
And they said, OK, we'll look into that for you.
They did. No,
so they did more.
I think we were still at least another 10 phone calls away, to go, yes, I know, but can you fill it in? Because it's still not filled in. But this is the thing. It's just a level of incompetence. Is there also an element where, frankly, our local councils do not have enough money? They're spending it on, those rainbow crossings
you want rainbow crossings and DEI hires and.
They do seem to always have money for the stuff they care about.
There's money for all of that stuff.
And interestingly, some councils do much better than others. So why?
And there's money to create groups within local communities that keep them isolated from the rest of the community and everything else. We need a complete and fundamental reset of the priorities in this country, and we'll suddenly find that there's billions of pounds that are being misspent. We'll suddenly come into looking at priorities like potholes.
That is what reform says. I mean, I think one of the problems we also have there is local councils. They've lost, I think their money from central government has gone down by about 60% over the last couple of decades. And yet they're spending on things like, special education need children and like taxis for them, and also care for elderly, vulnerable people who live miles away from their families. These are massive, exponential expenses, and maybe these shouldn't be on local authorities. Maybe these should be coming out of direct national taxation spending.
Care for the elderly should come out of the NHS budget because it would make more sense. At the minute, bed blocking in a hospital means the local council doesn't pay for it. Local council will turn around and say we can't take the person out into local care, so you keep them.
So we'll spend 10 times more to keep them in hospital.
But it's someone else's budget, so they don't care. But whose budget it is ultimately is ours.
Everything ends up with us being paid for. It is just a general level of incompetence, isn't it? I mean, it's something that reforms that they were tackling in some of the councils they've taken over. We'll have to see the fruits of that. I imagine, again, like going into central government, it's really sodding hard to change things. But there we are. Anyway, so much more coming up. Again, we've done well. We do world affairs, we do potholes, we do the police, you name it, we talk about it. So much more coming up. More from Philip Ingram. We're going to be talking more about Iran. What's going on with Greenland? I mean, that meeting between the Danes and the Americans didn't apparently go that well, certainly according to the Danes. More on the West Midlands Chief Constable. And if you live in many areas across this country, not getting a vote in the local elections. Why? Because your local councillor thinks he's probably going to be voted out. That's the reason why those elections are being cancelled. All that coming up. Keep in touch. Have your say as well. This is Talk.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. It's Talk the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer, just heading towards 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connection device, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Lots more to talk about. If you miss anything from the show, and we've had a rip-roaring start to the show, if I say so myself, go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, more on that West Midlands Police Chief who will not go. The 4 million people to be denied a vote at the local elections because, well, Labour are worried about losing a load of seats. And more than a third of university students believe that Reform UK should be banned from speaking at British universities. More than a third of university students are too thick to be allowed to be at university. I would respond to that. Plus, Lucy Connolly, of course, arrested over that tweet about the Southport attack. She has been warned that she could be recalled to prison over a recent post on X, which was quite clearly a joke. She foolish for not actually obeying the terms of her release for the time that she has to? Or is this a massive curtailment of free speech? Well, we'll talk to the Free Speech Union about that as well. Lots more to talk about. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all the big stories, including foreign affairs. Lots to talk about there. But in particular about the West Midlands Police Chief, Craig Guildford, refusing to resign even after a report exposed his lies about the Maccabi Tel Aviv fan ban, which frankly we'd already known. A lot of it's been exposed actually by Nick Timothy, the Tory MP we spoke to a little bit earlier on the show. If you missed that, do go back and have a watch of that on our YouTube page. But I want to know your reaction to that. I also want to hear your thoughts on people being denied a vote in local elections, and the government basically just saying to councils, oh, if you'd like to move the elections by another year, you know, you can do that if you think with your reorganisation, the district and local councils, that you can't really, you haven't got the bandwidth to hold a local election, then you can postpone them. I mean, this is an absolute affront to democracy. Even the Electoral Commission, who you'd think would have power in this area, are saying this is wrong. I'd love to hear your thoughts on both of those stories and anything else you want to have your say on, including the potholes. Give us a call on 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK and your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate and text costs one standard network rate message. But you knew all that already. Delighted to say, still joining me is Philip Ingram, MBE, former Senior Military Intelligence Officer. Morning.
Good morning.
Thank you once again for joining us. Let's come back. Let's start actually in this hour with the almost 4 million people denied a vote in local elections. Yep. Blatant attack on democracy. Even the Electoral Commission have said this is unacceptable. The reason given by the government, which is expected to cancel at least 27 local elections, of course, elections in Scotland and Wales going ahead, elections across large parts of the country going ahead, they're claiming under an obscure clause in the 2000 Local Government Act, which gives them the power to delay votes, they're saying that basically you know, a lot of them are basically rearranging, they're restructuring, abolishing some district councils, introducing moralities and otherwise, and saying that, you know, if you haven't really got the money, the time, the organisation to run elections, you can postpone them for another year. The independent watchdog, the Electoral Commission, said this doesn't constitute the sort of exceptional circumstances that are in this act, like war, pandemic, even then. Americans had a presidential election during the pandemic. We have a pothole pandemic, yeah.
That must count.
They say it just doesn't justify it, but they're going to go ahead with it. Most of the councils have said we'll cancel and delay on Labour. Yeah. What a surprise. What do you make of this?
I can smell, there's two words that you put together, and the first one is bull.
I do have to tell him in the you're not allowed to say certain things.
I'll not, I can't remember what the second one is. You know, this is actually the government trying to stop backbench revolts and further splits in the backbenches of the Labour Party, because if all these new Labour MPs suddenly see that in the local councils in their area, the vote has shifted completely and they're going to be one-shot wonders, they're then going to want to make their own voice heard for the short period of time that they've got left in Parliament, and therefore they're going to revolt against everything that the government's doing and cause the government more pain. So what they're trying to do is delay that inevitability. Their MPs are clearly too thick to recognise that that's what's going to happen anyway.
Yeah, it's just extraordinary. But we look at some of the areas. I mean, Labour areas, it's Hyndburn, Preston, Blackburn with Darwen, Chorley and Exeter, all Labour-run councils that confirmed they'll delay their elections. 7 more expected to delay. Lib Dems, Cheltenham, they've confirmed they're Lib Dem and confirmed they're going to delays. Conservatives, East Sussex and West Sussex, the councils, they've confirmed delays. I mean, they should absolutely not do that. It's absolutely outrageous. I know Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, said, this shouldn't be happening.
Yep.
But I don't, again, doesn't seem to have the power to stop this. But I mean, it's just outrageous. I thought it was outrageous that we had local elections postponed during the pandemic. I say when the Americans were able to hold a presidential election across the whole country. For goodness sake.
I'm sorry, the people need to take control again, and in the local councils they need to make it very, very become very, very vocal. Let it known to the local councils
that you're going to be punished.
That they need the elections to go ahead, or you're going to be punished even more.
Yeah, absolutely. And they really do. And again, it's something actually the Conservative Shadow Attorney General, Lord Wolfson, told us a bit earlier. He said, I would rather that people, voted for any party other than my party than didn't vote. You've got to go out and vote. You don't keep pass. The government thinks they can get away with this. Because people don't really care about local elections. Here's my thing. You can never moan about your bin collections. You can never moan about the potholes. You can never moan about whatever local services there are. Litter in the street. You don't get to moan about anything if you don't vote. It's one of the first questions I ask people when they moan about something in the local area. Did you vote at the last election? Because I did. I voted I've never missed a single election, as far as I'm aware, since I first had the right to vote.
All of the things that are happening in this country at the minute are the initial indicators of what has happened in every country that's turned into a dictatorship.
Wow, that escalated quickly.
Where elections have been banned and disappear.
Because it just makes it easier. It sets the precedent. I've seen a lot of people online say, what if Keir Starmer tries to delay the general election? I think at that point, by the way, I think the King steps in at that point.
Well, we'd hope the King...
I mean, that will be the job of a constitutional monarchy. He should step in at that point.
It is, but the trouble is, Keir Starmer has got the majority in Parliament to change the Parliament Act and to allow that to happen. And to delay the general election, turn around and say the world is a more unstable place. Use exactly the same excuse that he's using for local elections, but take it into
And I would have said a few years ago, conspiracy theory. But here's the thing. After what happened during lockdown, after the abject lack of any scrutiny, any proper debate, but people, I mean, literally, even within Cabinet, under the Tories, even in Cabinet ministers, and I've had it verified for about 4 or 5, in Cabinet ministers, when they have Zoom meetings, they're supposed to be debating the policy of the country about whether or not we're allowed to leave our sodding homes or not, travel, go to work even. The Cabinet ministers were kept on mute.
Yeah.
So they couldn't speak. So they weren't able to sit and go, excuse me, no, Prime Minister. They were on mute and only allowed to speak. And I'm sorry, that is not how governments work. And there's no reason why a pandemic should stop people being able to have that debate. So I no longer trust any of them.
And this government is muting more people than even the Tories did.
No, exactly. Do you know who needs to be muted? And that's Craig Guildford, the West Midlands Chief Constable. He needs to be out of a job. He needs to, frankly, I think he needs to be prosecuted. We were discussing a bit earlier. He really is beyond the pale in terms of what he has done. Oh, goodness me, extraordinary breaking news we've just had in the last couple of moments. Kemi Badenoch has sacked her Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick. The Tory leader has sacked... Now, again, we know these were the two rivals for the Tory leadership back in 2024. There's no doubt at all that Robert Jenrick has continued with his leadership ambitions, shall we say. We also know there's been quite a lot
of speculation.
There's been quite a speculation about also his perhaps he's been more warm towards reform. Who knows? But she has just given a statement confirming that Robert Jenrick has been sacked from the Shadow Cabinet. He's had not just lost his job in the Shadow Cabinet, he's had the Tory whip removed and his party membership suspended. Bearing in mind, a year ago, this was the man who came a close second to being the Tory leader. Kemi Badenoch has just said, I was presented with clear, irrefutable evidence that he was plotting in secret to defect in a way designed to be as damaging as possible to his shadow cabinet colleagues and the wider Conservative Party. The British public, she says, are tired of political psychodrama, and so am I. They saw too much of it in the last government. They're seeing too much of it in this government. I will not repeat those mistakes. So it would appear Kemi Badenoch has sacked The leading members of her shadow cabinet removed his party membership even because she says she has clear, irrefutable evidence he was plotting to defect, presumably to reform in a way that would damage the party. Extraordinary news. Philip, what do you make of this news?
Well, there's been lots of speculation over recent weeks of Robert Jenrick defecting to Reform and planning to do that. So
that if he was leader, that he would work with them more closely.
Well, yes, but there's been a lot of disinformation going on around and a lot being played out, and clearly she has got some evidence and has decided to. Actually, this is showing real leadership by taking the initiative. If the evidence is there, and it's very clear indeed.
If of course one would now expect if he was planning to go that he would go.
He will go, yes.
That this would certainly hasten that.
Very much so.
But then it would be a sort of, well, yeah, you're now sacked. But how damaging do you think this is? He's a very prominent member of the party. Bearing in mind, of course, he did resign from the Conservative government. He worked in the Home Office, immigration, and his line was, look, I resigned because I couldn't, we weren't going to do what we promised we would do. That was his line. There's an awful lot of Tories I've spoken to on air and off air who very much supported him as a candidate. Loads who've actually got quite a lot of sympathies with Reform, interestingly. He's been playing a blinder on social media. Yep. It's got to be said. We have a regular weekly slot here when he comes in, and answers questions from our audience. He's very prolific online and on air. Much more so than Kemi Badenoch certainly was being. She's been doing a lot better in the last few months. And it's interesting that Tory polls picking up a little bit. People want to see their opposition leaders. How big a threat to her is she? Because there's an element where, with him out of the party, his threat is gone.
His threat has gone, but his threat has shifted, and we're going to see this. And we said this last year several times. We're going to see this more and more as we get closer to the general election from senior Tory frontbenchers, from Tory backbenchers, from former Tory ministers and MPs defecting to Reform because they can see the potential for them to get back into Parliament again. And actually, from a Reform perspective, who have not got people with a depth and understanding of how to run a government.
Someone who's been at the heart of government.
It's going to be good, but what it's going to do is dilute Reform and turn it into Tory too.
I think that Robert Jenrick is a very different matter from Nadhim Zahawi.
Yes.
Simply because Nadhim Zahawi was someone who was sacked.
Yep.
Whereas Robert Jenrick is a frontbencher, as almost became Tory leader, and could perhaps, if there was a decision after local elections, Tories didn't do well, could perhaps already still have an opportunity of being Tory leader. And somebody who has got a bit more credibility on a number of issues than Nadhim Zahawi, who's totally and utterly imbued in the failures of the last Tory government. But if you're just tuning in, just to remind you, and just recap what Kemi Badenoch has said, she has confirmed that Robert Jenrick has been sacked from the Shadow Cabinet as Shadow Justice Secretary. He's had the whip removed, so he's no longer sitting as a Tory MP, he's now an independent, and he's even had his party membership suspended. This is what Kemi Badenoch had to say in a statement. I was presented with clear, irrefutable evidence that he was plotting in secret to defect in a way designed to be as damaging as possible to his shadow cabinet colleagues and the wider Conservative Party. The British public, Kemi Badenoch says, are tired of political psychodrama, and so am I. They saw too much of it in the last government. They're seeing too much of it in this government. I will not repeat those mistakes. Now, she ain't wrong about the psychodrama. One of the things the British public, changing a Prime Minister, something the Prime Minister at PMQs, had a dig out the Tories about, changing a Chancellor, changing a Prime Minister, all this, going, who's battling who, another leadership contest. Public don't like it. They like united parties, or they also want a party that knows what it's united about.
But they also want clear leadership. And actually what she's showing here, if she's got that irrefutable evidence, is a level of leadership that she has been criticised for not displaying beforehand. So this is a decisive move forward as she criticises Keir Starmer for his U-turns and showing poor leadership and all the rest of it. She's actually stepped up and done something, being proactive. That in our Parliament is something that's quite unusual.
That will be seen as a sign of strength, certainly. But looking at it from the other side, how pessimistic must a senior member of the shadow cabinet be about the prospects of the Conservative Party in the general election, which is still years away?
Well,
if he is willing to jump ship, presumably, I'm going to guess this was going to be just before local elections or something like that.
But if they're sitting there looking at the polls and looking at the decimation that's coming and anticipating what's going to happen, not just in the local elections, but the elections in Scotland and the elections in Wales, they're reading the tea leaves and going, actually, to get into the position where I am going to properly establish myself in reform, for reform to either form the next government or be part of the coalition in the next government and have a position that suits my experience and that I want to get, I need to have several years.
Do you know who knows whose nose is going to be out of joint? I'm just thinking quite some of the reform folk who were perhaps hoping to get, say, Shadow Home Secretary or Home Secretary.
And you know, whenever you get the likes of Jenrick coming across, who has had leadership bids for the Conservative Party, this is where Nigel Farage, if he accepts him in, and it's up to he may not accept him in, but Nigel needs to then go and, well, we've got someone who's got leadership ambitions. We know that they're clear leadership ambitions. We know that someone is someone who's got leadership experience in government.
Absolutely.
I need to watch myself.
Yeah, well, that's not bad. I think competition is always good in these circumstances. I would love to hear your response to this. Do get in touch. 0344 499 1000. Text us on 87222. Get in touch on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at national rate. Text cost £1, standard network rate message. I'd much prefer a call, much more immediacy. Get in touch. What do you make of Robert Jenrick basically being suspended even from the Conservative Party, let alone from the shadow cabinet? Looks like he was going to defect. I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say he wasn't going to defect to the Greens. Going out on a limb there, guys. I'm pretty sure it wasn't the Greens. He wasn't going to go...
Lib Dems?
Well, Lib Dem. I don't think it was going to happen.
Scottish National Party?
Pretty sure he was going to go to reform. Now, of course, Nigel Farage would much prefer this to have been something he could control, bringing out. But again, it's a very big difference between bringing out a previously sacked ex-MP, from onto the stage and introduce someone who still ostensibly has a big future in Conservative politics ahead of him,
and
Robert
whose
Jenrick.
popularity is growing.
Yeah. Now, interestingly, the Guido Fawkes website, they know their stuff. They say that Nigel Farage says he hadn't agreed a defection with Robert Jenrick, although he does say, of course, I've talked with Robert Jenrick. Had we signed and sealed a deal? No. Question is, of course, would he accept Robert Jenrick? I would have thought absolutely.
Yeah, and I think he's going to accept a greater number of former Tory MPs, ministers, and current ones.
And there will be many more to come.
If you get them, and there will be many more to come. A lot of waiting to after the local elections to read the tea leaves, and then.
But again, I suppose it's one of those things with people who are who are going to defect. There's going to be sort of statute of limitations, isn't there? There's an element where the biggest brownie points, the biggest jobs are going to go to the people who defect early, not someone who 3 weeks before a general election, with the polls suggesting they'd lose, go, all right, I give in. Those people are not going to be trusted.
And I wait with bated breath for the first Labour MPs to jump to reform.
I think that's going to happen in the Red Wall.
Some of those who realise that they're going to be one-shot wonders are going to go, actually, I quite like this staying in Parliament. I want to keep the job. I don't really care what colour flag I wear. I'll say whatever I need to say to stay in the job. Yeah,
it's going to be absolutely fascinating. Give us a call. I want to hear your thoughts. Do you think that Robert Jenrick should be welcomed into reform? Again, or the Greens or the Lib Dems. I don't know, maybe he's gone to Labour. Who knows? Nigel Farage says he hadn't agreed a defection. Of course, he's talked with Robert Jenrick. If they've had the conversations, of course they've had the conversations. Signed and sealed a deal. So we don't know if Robert Jenrick's got a particular shadow job or anything like that. Such as they really have those roles there, actually. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Loads more I wanted to be talking about, including the West Midlands Police Chief. We'll come back to all of that, but we're going to take a quick break and get your calls on air. Get on the phone lines now. This is Talk.
This is the Political Asylum, current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up! I'm trying to record something. Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this. We're with you every weekday night, Monday to Friday, 7 until 10 p.m, right here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. Well, we were just talking about, frankly, a lot of big major stories happening today. But breaking news in the last 15 minutes or so. Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, has sacked her Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick. Not only that, she's removed the Tory whip. He's no longer a Tory MP. He's still an MP, but no longer a Tory MP. He's not even a Tory party member. His party membership has been suspended. Why? She says she was presented with clear, irrefutable evidence, her words, that he was plotting in secret to defect in a way designed to be as damaging as possible to his shadow cabinet colleagues and the wider Conservative Party. She says she and the British public are tired of political psychodramas. She will not repeat those mistakes. Well, he has gone. Yet to hear from Robert Jenrick, but Nigel Farage, who's doing a press conference in Scotland, has just been speaking. He says he hadn't agreed to a defection with Robert Jenrick. He says, of course, I've talked with Robert Jenrick. Had we signed and sealed a deal? No. He went on to say, I'm very surprised that this news was broken. I imagine he's a bit annoyed as well, would have wanted to do it on his terms. But Nigel Farage says, I never reveal private conversations with anybody. I'm going to say that I've had conversations with a number of very senior Conservatives over the course of the last week and the last month. Of course, we've seen Nadeem Sahawi earlier this week defect. Of course, but he's an ex-minister. He's and an ex-MP, rather different from someone, a senior figure in the current shadow cabinet, as Robert Jenrick was until, at about 11 o'clock this morning. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. 0344 499 1000. This shock news. Paul is in Southampton. Paul, what do you make of it?
Oh, I think it potentially could be some pretty good news for reform, that they've got a sitting or satting member of a cabinet. So, I just think he's what reform need. He's conservative. If David Davis and Ian Duncan Smith came across, they would be two more excellent. They're Conservatives, not wet like Cleverly and co.
Well, this is the interesting thing, and this is part of sort of the reform line, which is that, again, when the BBC or Labour say, they're far right, I think most of us looking at the policies, these are just not, most of their policies are just normal Conservative policies, big C or a small c. It's the Conservative Party that for years promised and didn't deliver. In fact, often did the opposite of what it said, like controlling immigration, and then we had the Boris wave. But also it just moved completely to the left on the woke issues, and trans women and men, trans women and women, all that nonsense. And I mean, they're the ones who deserted Conservative values.
Absolutely. I've got no problems with true Conservatives, because that's what reform are. I don't, and they keep saying, we're a broad church, but most of them, they've morphed into the Liberal Democrats, but they just, for some reason, they think they've got a better chance of being in government.
Wearing a blue rosette, I mean, that's...
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, it's interesting, because Kemi Badenoch says she wants to end the psychodrama, and there's a lot, and I've talked about this a lot in the past, this need, people like parties that are unified, but they need to know what they're unified around.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think Badenoch's doing that well. I mean, all she's done is talk the talk. She said they're going to do...
You can't really do anything when you're an opposition leader. You don't have any power.
No, exactly. So why are people saying, she's doing really well? She's just sitting there. She's made a few pretty good speeches in Parliament, but that still doesn't say that everything that she said they're going to do with ECHR and immigration, they did the exact opposite when they were in power.
You still got the trust issue. Can I ask you finally, Paul, if a prominent Labour politician, or even just a Labour MP from the Red Wall who's facing certain annihilation at the next election on the current polling, if they went over to reform, would you welcome them? Would you trust them?
Labour all the way across to a true Conservative, I would be highly sceptical. But then Simon Danzig is now a Reform member, isn't he? And he was but there again, in his favour, he's the one that's put the light on these rape gangs.
Yeah.
So he's not tried to hide that.
So you'd probably judge it on individual merit?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's horses for courses. And if whoever it comes in is a senior Labour politician, what have they done and what have they said that's made them Conservative? Even Tugendhat, I'm looking at the TV now, and you've got Tom Tugendhat. He's done quite well. He's a Conservative.
Yeah.
But that bloke stood next to him cleverly. He claimed he was a Thatcherite. No, he's not.
Why have you not? Because we're not on the telly anymore. We're on YouTube. You can watch us on YouTube. Paul, thank you for that. Appreciate that. Daniel is in Epsom, wants to have his say on Robert Jenrick being sacked for plotting in secret to defect to Reform. What do you have to say?
Oh, Julia, what a great bit of news. I'm really, really happy. Because the Conservative brand is over, same as Labour's. The Conrad Uniparty is finished. The writing's on the wall. Nigel Farage is going to be our next Prime Minister, and Reform are going to be the largest party, right? And I think those Conservatives that are actually of the right, are you of the right? If you are, the half of you that are should really join Reform.
Sort of come on in, the water's lovely. Join us.
Yeah, but only accept the ones that are of the right. Because the Reform Party is only the Conservative Party that I grew up with in the 80s. Now, it's only them. Well, what's happened is the modern Conservative Party has moved, right, to the centre. But
it's basically Tony Blair. It's Blairite party, isn't it?
But what's happened is the bulk of the British majority of voters haven't. Yeah. Most of us are still of the right. So those conservatives, they should any of them that are actually of the right should all move. But Robert Jenrick, one of my favourites, I'm really pleased he's coming over. And the writing's on the wall, people.
Very interesting, very interesting. Daniel, thank you very much for that. Just a quick word from Philip Ingram. This is interesting. The Conservative Party has been the most successful political force in Western world in terms of their ability to get themselves elected. And that is largely because, the British public is largely, there is a big clump of people in the moderate centre right. And this idea that Reform is something way to the extreme of that, if you look at the policies and the values, it's basically as you said, where the Tory party was in the 80s.
Exactly. And everyone else has moved slightly left.
A lot left.
In what's going on. And then you get the confusion on the left, where they're either extreme left or they're foot in both camps, right and left at the same time.
Yeah, trying. Very interesting. We're going to take a quick break. And quite coincidentally and rather conveniently, and my goodness, I hope he's definitely answering the phone, Richard Tice, Reform MP and Deputy Leader of the party, is up next. You do not want to miss that. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, good morning to you. An extraordinary day of news today here at Talk, the home of common sense. Well, is it going to be a common sense decision for Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, as was until about 20 minutes ago or so, to have been, according to Kemi Badenoch, his old boss, plotting to defect to Reform? He has now been sacked as Shadow Justice Secretary, and even had the party whip and his party membership suspended. Kemi Badenoch confirmed that she had sacked Robert Jenrick in a message on X. She also put out video. This is what she had to say.
This morning, I removed the Conservative whip from Robert Jenrick after dismissing him from the Shadow Cabinet. I was very sorry to be presented with clear, irrefutable evidence, not just that he was preparing to defect, but he was planning to do so in the most damaging way possible to the Conservative Party and his Shadow Cabinet colleagues. It is my responsibility to protect our party, and faced with that information, I took the only decision that any responsible leader could.
Well, that's what Kemi Badenoch had to say. Nigel Farage has said he doesn't reveal private conversations, but he has had conversations with many senior Conservatives, including Robert Jenrick. Well, let's try and find out what's really going on with his Deputy Leader of Reform UK and MP Richard Tice, who joins us now. Good morning to you, Richard.
Well, good morning. Another quiet news day here at the heart of common sense.
Absolutely. Were you expecting this?
No, I wasn't. I was just in the chamber, just making some comments to the Minister about the ludicrous digitalised D scheme, and came out to see that Kemi Badenoch's either had a nightmare overnight or had a dream. It's unclear which.
Well, this is the thing. No, your party leader said he's been in talks with senior Conservatives. We've had numerous senior Conservatives, as was, coming over to your party. The latest being Nadeem Zahawi, had Nadine Dorries, of course. It's a big difference, though, isn't there, between a former MP who'd been at the heart of the last government, the last cabinet, and a leading member of the current Conservative shadow cabinet, probably one of the most sort of, known and sort of, prolific on social media and in the media members of her shadow cabinet, Robert Jenrick, in talks about coming over to your party. Were you aware of that conversation taking place?
Well, I think you're just getting a little bit ahead of yourself. But look, obviously, in and around the chamber, everyone's very civil to each other. We pass the time of the day, we chat, and it's all very courteous and professional across all parties, as you would hope and expect. We never reveal sort of private conversations or give a running commentary.
So that's yes.
But people who believe in our values and our principles, and of course who pass our strict vetting requirements, are then welcome into the party. So let's. I've no idea. I think everyone was working on the assumption that Kemi Badenoch would have a nightmare on May the 7th in the local elections, and there would be a leadership contest in the Tory party immediately afterwards that Robert Jenrick would presumably have been a part of.
So do you think this is a bit of plotting that has actually backfired horribly on Robert Jenrick, and he could have been in a few months' time the Conservative Party leader?
I genuinely have no idea what's gone on here.
Can I just clarify? You're the deputy leader of your party, and Nigel Farage has said he has had private conversations with a number of senior Conservatives. I don't think we're talking... He said, had we signed and sealed a deal? No. I don't think we're talking about a hello, Robert, as you pass him after PMQs. They've clearly been conversations at the highest levels. Are you saying that you were not aware that Nigel Farage was having conversations with the Shadow Justice Secretary about him defecting to your party? Are you out of the loop, Richard?
The whole point about private is that it is private.
There's private. There's not sharing it with the world or the whole party. You're the deputy leader of the party. You gave your leadership away to get Nigel Farage back. Are you out of the loop?
The whole point about not giving a running commentary is exactly that.
So you did know?
What I'm delighted to confirm is that I've had no discussions with Mr. Jenrick about this. But look,
you're aware of conversations taking place.
Who knows what is in his mind? He's always very civil and very courteous and very smiley in and around the chamber. And of course, we occasionally talk about the madness of Labour policy and what's working and what isn't working, and that you would expect, frankly, from people of the common sense Conservative with a small C view of the world.
Isn't it the case that actually Robert Jenrick leadership you might have regarded as more of a threat to reform? The leadership of the Conservative Party?
No, there's no threat from the Conservatives to reform whatsoever. When you've got a toxic brand, it doesn't matter who is leading it. It is toxic. The brand is done. it's over. It's not going to be a national party on May the 8th because it'll have almost no representation in Wales, none in Scotland. It's a slippery slope downwards.
Okay, if it's such a toxic party and people who are still, in that party, serving and previously in the government or even in the cabinet, now currently in the shadow cabinet, isn't that damaging the reform brand? There was a pretty negative reaction, pretty big backlash to Nadeem Zahawi being sort of hailed as this great hope for the party, joining a man who was sacked. A man who was sacked from government. He's got great business acumen, but he was sacked basically because he didn't reveal that he was being investigated by HMRC for not paying all his taxes on his business, for goodness sake.
But here's the point. What I said, but
haven't you brought that toxicity into your party?
No, Julia, the brand is toxic. There are good people within any organisation, business, charity, political party, but if a brand is toxic, then that is a much, much harder challenge for people to do. But of course, those within such an entity, it's the hardest for them to do and accept just how toxic a brand has become.
Would you also accept, as many are expecting might happen, certainly perhaps closer to whenever their general election takes place rather than local elections coming this May, or Scottish and Welsh Assembly elections, Labour MPs, perhaps those Red Wall Labour MPs who were in seats which actually for a while did become Conservative seats under Boris Johnson, them coming over to reform?
Well, we're a broad church in a glorious Christian country where we believe in the rights of people. Make mistakes, they take their little punishment, and then we believe in forgiveness. We're all sinners, Julia. It's just a question of quantum.
The party is open to anyone. Would you accept a former Green or a Lib Dem?
Let me go back to the point. I said people who believe in our principles and our values.
Yep.
That is the absolute key. And we've emerged as a disruptive political force because the two main parties have become a uniparty that has made people poorer, reduced the quality of life, and led to open borders and mass illegal immigration. They've lost control. We're going to have a fantastic round of May elections where we're allowed to vote.
Well, I was going to come on to that.
4 million people are going to be denied the right to vote. And the government, I think over 20 Labour councils are scrapping their elections because they're absolutely petrified. They are genuinely frit of exposing themselves to reform. But look, that's the power of competition. And there are many socially conservative, traditional, deeply patriotic Labour voters, particularly in the north of England, who are coming over to reform in their droves. I've had senior union figures say their members are voting reform.
Yeah, very interesting. But coming back to the local elections, almost 4 million people losing out in elections. Some councils which are being rearranged, the district councils, all this big restructuring we're told is going to help us in the future. They're going to be in office for 7 years. Now, even the Electoral Commission, along with pretty much every other party, has criticised Labour for doing this. Some Tory councillors are agreeing to delay those elections. Mostly it is Labour councils. Is there any way this can actually be stopped? Because, of course, the provisions in the Act in 2000, which allowed governments to delay elections, was about extreme circumstances such as being at war or even in a pandemic, and even then, big question marks about the stalling of the local elections in the pandemic, given that America managed to hold an entire presidential election in that same year during a lockdown. Is there any way this can be challenged legally?
Well, that's why we have said that we're going to try a judicial review of this process. Lawyers are instructed. They're beavering away as we speak, Julia. And so hopefully we can try and stop this. But you know what the law's like. It's always a 50-50, frankly, plus or minus. So I don't know. But we're certainly going to give it a very serious, proper go, and let's see where it gets to. But time will be of the essence.
Your boss is at a press conference in Scotland. Let's have a little listen to a little watch of what he has had to say about Robert Jenrick at that press conference. Watch and listen. I'll get your thoughts on that afterwards.
I'm very surprised that this news is broken.
Are you, though?
Well, I never reveal private conversations with anybody. I'm going to say that I've had conversations with a number of very senior Conservatives over the course of the last week, over the course of the last month. Of course, I've talked to Robert Jenrick. Was I on the verge of signing a document with him? No. But have we had conversations? Yes.
So he was considering leaving the Conservatives and joining Reform UK?
I think virtually every Conservative is considering leaving the Conservatives, yes.
That's very interesting there. One of the classic sort of Nigel Farage response there, Richard Tice, your boss saying he thinks that virtually every Conservative is
yeah, exactly.
leaving. You had conversations with all of them?
Well, no, far from it. The whole point is they want to leave a toxic brand. The question is, do they go to the Lib Dems? Do some go to the Socialists? Given that much of the parliamentary Tory party are essentially con-socialists, or do a few of them want to come to Reform? That's the sort of the makeup. But yes, I think Nigel's quite right. They're all trying to jump a sinking ship.
Absolutely fascinating. Can I just ask you just finally, I wanted to get to this before we had this breaking news, in terms of a third of students apparently have been polled, say that Reform should be banned from universities, from speaking, from appearing, from organising societies at British universities. What do you say to that?
I'm appalled, shocked, but not surprised. I saw it in York University when a Reform branch was going to be set up. There were applications by other societies to the student union at York University to prevent it. I went to the first launch event. We had to have police, we had to have major security, absolutely appalling. But they're doing a great job, and it's a very simple way to deal with this. The government should say to universities, if you don't allow political parties to have branches, you lose all of your research funding. Beginning and end of story. Guess what? Money talks, and they'll soon come round and believe in the right of democracy and free speech.
I would go so far as to say, we're not going to give any tuition fee loans to anybody coming to your university because you're not valid. If you don't accept you are, whether people agree with you or not, you're a legitimate political party in this country. Well, we're going to wait and see. We'll talk to you again, I'm sure, about whether or not you're in the loop in terms of conversations with defectors. I have a funny feeling from the smirk on your face, you absolutely were. Richard Tice, Deputy Leader of Reform UK, thank you for that. Philip Ingram's still with me, former senior military intelligence officer. Now, this is what you did for a living for many years. That face says to me he absolutely knew what was going on.
He needs coaching in body language. I would love to play. Richard, I would love to play poker against him because it would be so easy.
He doesn't mind us all knowing. The reality is, Kemi Badenoch sacking Robert Jenrick. I'll picture the day when Nigel Farage is in Scotland. They're launching, they're announcing their new Scottish Reform leader. There's a lot of other political parties are there. They've got this big play of the local elections. Whatever the timing was planned, as Kemi Badenoch suggested, to hurt the Conservative Party the most by defecting in a way that would damage the party. Whatever was happening, this isn't how Reform or Robert Jenrick wanted it to come out, is it?
No, it's not. And Robert Jenrick will almost certainly make a statement at some
He's
stage
on the back foot now.
in the next couple of days, but he's in the back foot. He will almost certainly attack Kemi Badenoch, but
she's played this quite well.
But he'd have done that anyway. He'll attack the Conservative Party, but he'd have done that anyway. And she's actually wrestled the initiative back again. I think this bodes well for her, and her standing takes some of the sting out of it, but there's still a painful sting to come.
Very interesting. Well, we're going to talk to Henry Hill, Deputy Editor of Conservative Home, representing grassroots Tory members, in just a couple of moments. I want to get your calls on air as well, your reaction. So far, calls are very positive about a possible defection. Again, we've not actually had it stated that he's defecting to Reform. I think we're just making a guess there, that it's probably not, the Communist Party of Great Britain or the Green Party. Same thing, to be fair. But more on that coming up. Give us a call if you have your say. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk. Some breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
Something you can indulge in as to all the people
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 11:48 is the time. Well, we had a packed show already. We had plenty of top guests talking about lots of big stories, and then the bombshell hit about 40 minutes or so ago. Kemi Badenoch, the Tory party leader, has sacked her Shadow Justice Secretary, that is Robert Jenrick, accusing him of plotting in secret to defect, which doesn't state Reform is the party he defected. I think we can safely say that is the party he was defecting, and that she has sacked him not only from the Shadow Cabinet, he's had the Tory whip removed, he's now sitting as an independent MP, but also he's lost his Tory party membership. She has given a statement on X, on Twitter, and written a statement basically saying the British public are tired of political psychodrama, and so I will not repeat those mistakes. She said she was presented with clear, irrefutable evidence that he was plotting in secret to defect in a way that designed to be as damaging as possible to his Shadow Cabinet colleagues and the wider Conservative Party. Well, let's talk about this right now with Henry Hill. He's Deputy Editor of Conservative Home. That's the grassroots website for Tory Party members. Henry Hill, what do you make of this news?
Well, I mean, once again, as so often in British politics, as you'll know, Julia, this seems to be a case of some grand scheme or design being let down by somebody leaving documents lying around.
Is that what you think it's down to? Because let's just say that according to various reports online, it's saying that Reform and Robert Jenrick, Kemi Badenoch is that he'd sat last week, he'd taken copious notes about the party's strategy. She came to Shadow Cabinet meeting on Tuesday and behaved as if nothing was going on. She apparently utterly furious about it. But what do we think this irrefutable evidence was then?
Well, this is it. I don't know. I've not seen it. I'm also just trying to work out how you leave evidence lying around in the days when everything is digital.
So you think this must have been something physical? I suppose someone could accidentally put someone into an email chain that they didn't mean to.
Maybe, but the term, so I don't know this for sure. I'm desperately sort of hitting up my contacts to try and find out. And the phrase that I'm getting is lying around. Okay. Now, that might just be sort of people using slang, but it is, because 20 years ago, sure, somebody left a document out or a printout from a meeting, all plausible. These days, slightly odd. Also, we've not been given this evidence. The Conservative Party could publish it. I don't see any reason why they couldn't necessarily. But
if this is, for instance, an email, a note or an exchange about, look, when I spoke to Nigel Farage about when I'm going to defect, he thinks blah, blah. I mean, that would be irrefutable evidence. She certainly feels very strongly about it. We haven't had a statement from Robert Jenrick yet. But it's interesting. Richard Tice looking like the cat that got the cream just now. Nigel Farage sort of claiming, let's say, faux sort of, oh, I've had conversations. But the reality is, although this is a big coup for Reform, it's not happened at the right time. And it's probably quite damaging to Robert Jenrick that it's happened in this way.
Oh, of course it is. It absolutely is. And if some evidence maybe that there was something to it is that if there was nothing to it, Robert Jenrick could have come out immediately, said it wasn't true, said that he would remain loyal to the Conservative Party as an independent and really played up and challenged Kemi Badenoch to the evidence.
But this is the thing about the timing. If this was something they were planning to do, you're thinking the most damage. We're not talking in 2029, are we? Before the general election, we're probably looking at before the local elections. Now, many have been expecting that, despite actually some very good performances at PMQs, some pretty strong sort of policy announcements from Kemi Badenoch, not much, tiny bit, but not much movement in the polls for the party. And many, like Richard Tice, say, look, that is now a Conservative. The brand is now too toxic to be rescued. But there was this view that both Labour and the Tories were going to do absolutely appallingly badly in the local elections. Reform was coming ahead. That would be a time when a Tory leadership challenge might take place, and Robert Jenrick would be well placed then to win the leadership, to show, look, you need to have someone who's fought on the lines I've fought on, he would say. However, I mean, does he want to be a Reform MP on the backbenches of a party that may well be the next government, but in 3.5 years' time, or be in the shadow cabinet of the Conservative Party when, let's face it, it's all to play for the next few years?
I would have been surprised, and I will be surprised, if Robert Jenrick was planning to defect. If nothing else, because we've seen time and again that Nigel Farage is very bad at having anybody of any stature in his parties who isn't Nigel Farage, right? And so if you were Robert Jenrick, you would be immediately there would be speculation about whether or not you had ambitions to lead reform. Robert Jenrick has, one of the reasons he has such a high profile at the moment is that he's been prepared to go a little bit off the reservation and range beyond his brief in the shadow cabinet. Nigel Farage absolutely wouldn't like him doing that. No. So it would be a very odd fit. And also, just messaging wise, if you're reform, you don't tee up a scalp, which Robert Jenrick absolutely would be if that defection was real, with Nadim Zahawi a couple of days before. That's a very strange way to serve up those offerings. Reform has always been, and UKIP before it, all of Farage's parties have been most effective when they have been playing with the minds of the Conservative Party, right? Nigel Farage is very, very good, and he recognises that he has the most influence when the Conservative Party is reacting to him.
Right.
That's when
that's it. I've got to bring you some breaking news. This is from Stephen Swindon, political editor of The Times. He says, it sounds like Kemi Badenoch's team got hold of a copy of Robert Jenrick's resignation speech after it was left, and the phrase you used, lying around, it was, we're told, a near final text. He cancelled a speaking engagement coming this weekend, and the thinking was that he was due to announce his defection in the next 24 hours. The Tories are also aware that he met with Nigel Farage in December, and one source said that meeting actually took place in Parliament. So when we look at that irrefutable evidence, I think a resignation speech is pretty strong evidence that someone's planning to go, and that it looks like it was going to be very, very soon. What do you make of that, Henry?
I mean, it's just baffling. Everything about this is baffling. I mean, I know that when you're in the boiler room, it's very easy when you're not in the boiler room to look at people in it and go, what on earth are you doing? Yeah. But writing the resignation speech, okay, maybe that's true. Two, printing it out, and then not numbering the printouts, and somebody who is presumably quite close to you and supportive of your leadership ambitions, leaving it somewhere for Kemi Badenoch's team to the whole thing.
That said, can I just say, I'm of an age. Robert Jenrick's a lot younger than me, but I'm of an age where if I really want to prove something and I need to have it on paper rather than on screen. That's an age thing, but I don't think he's at that age. That's the only explanation I had for that. But you would be pretty careful about that sort of thing. Do you think, could those documents have been left lying around deliberately? No, but that does not work for Robert Jenrick at all, does it?
No, no, it doesn't. And the suggestion is not that he left it lying around; it's that one of his advisors did, and his advisors are younger than me. I'd find it more plausible if they had accidentally put out a TikTok saying that he was going to resign.
Absolutely.
This entire thing is very, very, very strange.
So it is. Does this strengthen the Reform Party? Does this strengthen this action by Kemi Badenoch? It's pretty firm, decisive action. Does that strengthen Kemi Badenoch? Or is she weakened by losing such a strong performer in Robert Jenrick?
I mean, if he was planning to defect, then Kemi Badenoch has acted with celerity to head off what would have been an extremely damaging defection, and she has certainly strengthened her own position in the party, and she has insulated the Conservative Party from some damage. That is indisputable. Losing Robert Jenrick is nonetheless objectively a loss, because he is without doubt one of the front rank talents in the shadow cabinet. He's one of the very few shadow cabinet ministers who have been able to carve out a profile and occasionally set the news agenda. Most of the rest, but partly that was because he was willing to, not wait for the big policy review. Kemi has kind of handicapped most of the shadow cabinet.
She kind of handicapped herself, didn't she? Because again, people go, well, Nigel Farage just announcing, her saying, well, we're looking at everything for a couple of years. That wasn't going to fly with the electorate, was it?
Well, no. And however sensible it is, you don't need your whole manifesto now, right? No. Absolutely not. That's perfectly sensible. But you need to have hothoused a few things just to give your shadow ministers something to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Henry, I'm going to leave you to go back to all your contacts. Get back in touch with me. You've got my number. Tell me if you hear anything. Henry Hill, Deputy Editor of Conservative M. Thank you for that. Let's bring Philip Ingram back in. We've had. It's not beyond the wit of man to think that someone is going to leave documents lying around. We've had senior MOD officials and generals leaving documents on the bus and on the train, for goodness sake. But it sounds like they basically got hold of a copy of his resignation speech just lying around.
That's an oops moment for him and his staff.
We know a few Robert Jenrick's staff. I'm intrigued to know who's going to be sacked.
Who's done it? It could have been him himself. You know, he might have just left it.
It is an age thing. Back me up, guys. There's that thing. You need to sort of look at something on paper as opposed to sort of phone or on a screen.
I have to read everything and proof everything.
That's why there are so many spelling mistakes in young people's work, by the way.
Exactly, because you get word blind looking at a screen all the time. You look at screens.
But the thinking that it was due to happen, this announcement in the next 24 hours, this is the thing I find extraordinary. It was almost at the beginning of the local election campaign. Most people were expecting that he thought his chance would be after the general election campaign, or did Robert Jenrick calculate that actually Kemi Badenoch had shored up her support a lot? She's getting a lot more vocal support PMQs. And again, PMQs doesn't matter, except it does.
Yes.
In terms of the support from the backbenchers and whether you can perform well, which she's definitely been doing mostly. Do you think he thought, you know what, I ain't going to get the job here, I'm off?
The bottom line is we don't know what he was thinking. We'll wait to see his statement that comes out, but I don't think he's going to be the last.
I don't think he is. Absolutely. And also, if he's been at the heart of Tory thinking, well, there's no way Kemi Badenoch will be trusting him, given they were rivals in the leadership campaign. What does he know about Tory fortunes that isn't public yet?
Yes.
It's going to be absolutely fascinating. I'd love to hear from you. Give me your thoughts. Do you think it's a good thing for Robert Jenrick, a good thing for the Reform Party, a good thing for Tories, bad thing for... I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000. Still welcome your calls on the Maccabee Tel Aviv Chief Constable not going. Also on those elections being postponed or suspended. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense and breaking news.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense and indeed breaking news in the last hour. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, great to have your company. Great to hear from you as well. If you want to get in touch, I want to hear from you. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch about the extraordinary breaking news that Kemi Badenoch, the Tory party leader, has sacked her shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick, one of the most prominent people on her front bench team, and of course her rival for the Conservative leadership in 2024. He has been sacked. Here is why she did it.
This morning, I removed the Conservative whip from Robert Jenrick after dismissing him from the shadow cabinet. I was very sorry to be presented with clear, irrefutable evidence, not just that he was preparing to defect, but he was planning to do so in the most damaging way possible to the Conservative Party and his shadow cabinet colleagues. It is my responsibility to protect our party, and faced with that information, I took the only decision that any responsible leader could.
Well, it is claimed that Kemi Badenoch's team got hold of a copy of, wait for it, Robert Jenrick's resignation speech, which had been left, they say, lying around, and it was, in their words, a near final text. Also, it's reported by political editor of the Times, Stephen Swinford, who's very well connected, that Robert Jenrick had cancelled a speaking engagement this weekend, and the thinking was that he was due to announce his defection in the next 24 hours. The Tories were aware he'd met with Nigel Farage in December, and one source said that meeting had taken place in Parliament. Well, Nigel Farage was giving a press conference in Scotland when this news emerged, and here's what Nigel Farage had to say.
I'm very surprised that this news is broken.
Are you, though?
Well, I never reveal private conversations with anybody. I'm going to say that I've had conversations with a number of very senior Conservatives over the course of the last week, over the course of the last month. Of course, I've talked to Robert Jenrick. Was I on the verge of signing a document with him? No. But have we had conversations? Yes.
So he was considering leaving the Conservatives and joining Reform UK?
I think virtually every Conservative is considering leaving the Conservatives, yes.
It's a classic Nigel Farage response just there. Now, joining me throughout the show today, we've had lots of other things we were planning to discuss. Former senior military intelligence officer Philip Ingram. Now, you're watching all of this. You know about things that are being found and information behind. We talked to Richard Tice, the deputy leader of Reform, and as you said, you'd love to play poker with him because there were so many tells. And I asked at one point, you were out of the loop. Did you not know about this? But it was quite clear he did know. There was a twinkle in his eyes, a twinkle in Nigel Farage's eye. But let's face it, Kemi Badenoch has scuppered this big announcement, this big shock resignation. She's scuppered that. Does this show that actually she's got, well, it's quite, frankly, some cojones?
Well, that's the exact phrase that I was going to use. Yes, it does. She's stepped up to the mark, and out of this, it was going to be a disaster anyway. It'll still be a bit of a disaster for whenever Robert Jenrick, and I'm saying whenever, announces that he's moving and Nigel Farage steps up. But what she's done, she's taken the heat out of it, and she's wrestled the initiative back. And if you've got the initiative in a fight, then you can control it. And she's controlling it at the moment.
OK, good tactics by her. Well, let's talk about this right now with my next guest, but I do want you to get on the phone. I want to hear your reaction. I know a lot of you feel very strongly about your support for either the Conservatives or Reform, or you feel like I haven't got a party at the moment. What does this defection as we expect? By the way, there's nothing in anything that Kemi Badenoch, Nigel Farage, or no statement from Robert Jenrick yet that says which party he's defecting to. It could be the Greens. You just don't know how politics work these days. It could be. Who knows? Monster Raving Loon Party. Why not? I mean, why? Same thing. Same thing. And same thing. Actually, Monster Raving Loon Party have a lot more sensible policies than the Green Party.
Oh, than the Green Party, yes. not the Ulster Unionist Party.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. You can get in touch on Talk at 87222, on X at Talk TV. If you do get in touch on the calls, you're charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. Let's speak right now to Lord Robert Hayward, friend of the show, Conservative peer and pollster, of course. I think both of your hats are going to need to be on today. Robert, thank you so much for joining us at short notice.
Very short notice, but good to see you.
Well, just your initial reaction as a long-standing Conservative peer. What are your thoughts on this announcement from Kemi Badenoch?
Real shock, both at the announcement itself and the manner in which it's happened. And I think it'll take the political system a fair time to digest this news, because it is very big political news.
This is very big, isn't it? I mean, look, to a certain extent, you've got to remember, I'm sure you know very well, most people going about their daily lives don't have a clue who most politicians are, even the ones who are actually in government right now. I was a former political editor. I struggled with something. Which one's that one? They all shuffle around so much. They're not the big beast that we had perhaps when you and I were growing up. But nevertheless, Robert Jenrick, as the rival for the Tory leadership last time round against Kemi Badenoch, as someone who is very prolific on social media. He's really pushed a lot of the major stories. He does a lot of media interviews. He's regular here on this show. He's a big catch for Reform Party, isn't he?
Oh, there's no question he is. And I've seen him develop over the last few years as a politician, even since his defeat by Kemi for the leadership of the election just about a year ago. So there's no question he is a big catch. There has been, however, a general expectation that he would defect at some point or another.
Has there been? Most people I've been talking to is just expect that at some point he'll make another leadership challenge against Kemi Badenoch.
He's in a difficult position because Kemi Badenoch's leadership has got stronger and stronger since the Tory party conference.
Yeah,
that's all the opinion polls show that. You said just now about people's recognition. A level of recognition has risen. A general appreciation amongst the public has risen. There was a poll earlier this week that showed that she had overtaken Nigel Farage and Ed Davey in terms of favourability ratings.
Yeah.
So there's no question the circumstances were changing, and that therefore Robert was facing a more difficult task because Nigel Farage ain't going to give up the leadership of Reform, and it now looks as if Kemi would not be removed from leadership of the Tory party.
Because that was always the expectation, wasn't it? An absolute trouncing in the local elections that could cause Keir Starmer to fall, challenges against him and the Labour Party, but also the pressure would be on Kemi Badenoch. You can't hack it. You're not up to it. But again, her performances have started reaching the public in terms of PMQs, some policy announcements, some hard-hitting stuff that's been working. So in that case, does this look even more like blind, naked personal ambition?
I must admit, although I'm shocked by the decision and the action that Kemi has taken, I am also shocked because I thought that Robert had begun to position himself as the alternative leader, but not as the challenger at this point for the Tory leadership, for the reasons I've just identified, because he'd be in difficulty in either party. So I'm afraid there will be many people who will say, in the same way that they did about Nadine Zahawi, that this is naked ambition.
And this is the thing, one thing the public are very clear on, they really don't like people who switch parties, do they? I mean, they certainly feel strongly that there should be by-elections when people do. Something a lot of people have called for. I think that should be an absolute requirement of anybody who switches party who's a sitting MP. But certainly, I mean, the defection of Nadine Zahawi, again, a former MP, a former cabinet minister, who was sacked, by the way, for not paying, not revealing that he had was in basic battles with HMRC over not paying all of the taxes the taxman thought he should pay. I mean, that went down, for want of a better phrase, like a cup of cold sick with a lot of our audience.
Yes, I hate that expression, but you're right. And people don't like defections. But one has also to acknowledge that defections from a party, whoever they are, from whichever party to whichever, a defection from a party does damage the previous party that the individual concerned is leaving.
Because the message it sends is that Robert Jenrick, okay, maybe he doesn't think that his leadership ambitions are ever going to be realised, but we could also say he thinks that party is not, in a few years' time, going to win a general election, and he wants to get into Reform early to be a part of that. So he thinks that the Tories, no matter how well Kemi Badenoch does, are not going to be in power.
I think that's a fair analysis of it, and that's a fair assessment of what many people in the political world, and I'm taking my Tory party hat off here and talking as an analyst, there are many people in the political world who say that those who have defected have from Conservatives to Reform have a specific target in mind, whether that's an elected office, whether it's a place in the House of Lords, whatever it may happen to be, that by getting in early they are in a position to negotiate with Nigel Farage the role that they would have.
They will be more benignly looked upon. Here's the impact, again, looking at it with, with your, and you've always done this for us, and I so appreciate that, the pollster side of things rather than looking at it from a pure Tory side of things. That there was a lot of talk from people in both Tories and Reform about a future pact, a future coalition. Now, I've never been of the view that a pact before a general election would happen, and that really that it would be any good for either party. It would damage both Reform and Tory with their own supporters. But my expectation was absolutely, if there was one of those parties, most likely Reform, had a big majority, but they didn't have an overall majority, there would be working with the Conservatives. Realistically, Robert Jenrick was much more open to that, rather obviously now, than Kemi Badenoch appears to be. Do you think anything's changed there?
No, I think at the end of the day, assuming that you still have the same party leaders, politics, as we're discovering this morning, can change dramatically within a matter of minutes. Yeah. But negotiations in relation to some form of pact would normally take place after a general election.
As they did in 2010.
Yeah, sorry?
As they did in 2010.
As they did in 2010. I was just about to say, but there has been one notable exception to that, which was, of course, the agreement by Nigel Farage to withdraw candidates for Brexit party candidates from Tory constituencies. So there are slight different set of circumstances that could arise, but I think the vast majority of pacts are pacts in relation to government at a point when people know the numbers in terms of what they're bargaining
and
with.
what power they've got. Yeah, I mean, again, Nigel Farage is very clear that 2019 pact with Boris Johnson to, quote, get Brexit done. He feels that he was very much, deceived on that and would not do this again. Just some breaking news, coming out of the Times. Nigel Farage was due to do a Reform UK press conference this afternoon. He's been doing one this morning on the decision to delay local elections for millions of people. It now feels inevitable the press conference will have to be repurposed around Robert Jenrick's defection. Nothing yet from Team Jenrick, but of course they can't leave a vacuum. What's going to be in the news tomorrow is going to be very different if they speak or they don't speak. Do you expect that we will now have some sort of formal statement from Robert Jenrick? Because right now he is absolutely partyless.
I think it's absolutely clear that there will be a statement at some point. Nigel
Farage. He's already read his
in...
resignation speech by all accounts.
Nigel Farage is in Scotland today. I think actually Kemi is there as well. Yeah. But I think the probability is much more so that given, as you say, and what Kemi has said, that she had Robert's resignation speech, that there may well be a delay of a few hours or 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever it may happen to be, while Robert and Nigel Farage agree the circumstances under which a union between the two is to be announced.
Except, of course, Robert Jenrick has just lost all of his negotiating position. This is not the same as, look, I've got a top job in the other party. I may still have a chance of being Tory party leader. He ain't got any of that now.
No, and Nigel Farage is the great master of enticing journalists with, we've got a key announcement, we've got a key announcement. Yeah. On a number of occasions, he does have a key announcement. On other occasions, it's relatively low level. But on this occasion, as you say, we know what the position is going to be. But Nigel is a shrewd enough individual to find the right set of circumstances to maximise the position out of what has now become what I describe as a deflated balloon, not a burst one.
Very interesting. And again, you say Nigel Farage has dealt with a lot worse in his days. And of course, the interesting thing is a lot of people's criticism of Reform is that it's a one-man band. It's just Nigel Farage. Yes, they've got figures like Zia Youssef and newer MPs, Lee Anderson and Sarah Pochin and others, and Richard Tice, but not enough to go round all the different policy areas. Having another strong player would actually help the party, although there may be some clashing of egos. Can I just ask you just finally about the local elections? I say this is going to be the subject of Nigel Farage's press conference this afternoon. This decision by the government to invoke this act from about 25 years ago, that allowing them to postpone local elections if local councils want to do so. Largely it's Labour Party run councils who've chosen to do this in large parts of the country because they're restructuring the district and county councils and the like. This even the Electoral Commission has said this was supposed to be in extremis, in the event of a war, in the event of a pandemic and the like. What do you make of the decision of the government to allow councils to basically choose not to get voted out? Because
I asked the government minister in the Lords this very question, both on November the 18th and on December the 8th. And they said, oh, no, it's not going to happen. We want the elections to go ahead. And then suddenly on December the 18th, the day after Parliament went into recess, which, as far as I'm concerned, was utterly unacceptable. A letter goes to all the councils concerned saying, you can choose. And what the government actually hoped would happen would be that the Tory councils would say, oh yes, because the Tories face losses, we want to defer the elections. What has actually happened, which is acutely embarrassing for the government, is that the overwhelming majority of the councils that have said, yes, we want to defer, are Labour-controlled councils. Yeah. And as far as I'm concerned, there are circumstances, and I was party to the process when the elections were deferred over COVID.
Yeah. Which I also thought was outrageous, but there we are.
Well, I didn't. I thought it was good for public health, but and foot
the Americans managed to run a presidential election.
Julie, we can have a lengthy discussion on the subject as to what these timings of these different things were, but no, as I say, the government have got themselves into an amazing mess over local government reorganisation. They hoped that other people would get out of from under and say, oh yes, we want to defer the election. The Tory party and others have said, no, we don't want to defer elections except in one or two limited circumstances. And the Labour Party is now left embarrassed, holding the baby, and they're going to have to take a decision. But unfortunately, they will be at very short order. And the people we should be thinking of is both the candidates, but also the electoral administrators who don't know and will not know for several weeks whether they're administering elections or not.
It's just extraordinary. And in terms of, again, with your pollster hat on again, how bad are the elections going to be for both Labour and indeed the Conservative Party?
Well, clearly we don't know which ones are going to go ahead, but the ones that are definitely going to go ahead are really problematic for Labour, particularly in Wales and Scotland. For the Tory party, there were clearly going to be bad ones, and reform starting from zero in many of the places. Okay. They were going to have a good stage, but I think I've always said I will not forecast elections until a very, very few days.
You've always stuck by that, Lord Robert Hayward.
I will do so now.
We'll have to leave it there. So appreciate you joining us at short notice to talk about all of that, Conservative peer and pollster as well. It's great that you often put the two different hats on to give that analysis. Philip Ingram, what did you make of what he had to say?
Well, I think he's described perfectly the drama that's coming out that is rivaling the BBC series The Traitors. Yeah. And where the greater drama is, whether it's the made-up bit on TV or the even more made-up bit that seems to be happening in our Parliament, it's very difficult to work out which is more entertaining.
It's really extraordinary, isn't it? I'd love to hear your thoughts, everybody. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. I could just see, actually, that Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, has been making a statement. We'll find out what he has had to say in just a couple of moments. We'll get to your calls as well. Keep in touch. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. If you just tuned in, really extraordinary breaking news in the last hour and a bit. Kemi Badenoch, the Tory party leader, has sacked her Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick because basically she found out apparently resignation speech was found being a draft that was pretty much finished. They expected him to resign within the next 24 hours or so to join Reform. No one's actually mentioned the Reform Party, but we're pretty sure it's not the Green Party. Who knows? Could have been the Monster Raving Loony Party. We just don't know. But Kemi Badenoch has said she has irrefutable evidence that he was going to try and resign in a way that would damage the Conservative Party the most. And he has been sacked from the Shadow Cabinet. He has lost the Tory whip, and he's even had his membership of the Conservative Party suspended. Nothing yet from Robert Jenrick, although you'll be seeing his face all over our screen and many other TV screens today. Haven't seen anything from him yet. Nigel Farage has admitted, yes, there have been conversations, but he doesn't reveal private conversations with people. Richard Tice, the Deputy Leader of Reform, is taking a very similar line, but there is no doubt at all that this is a strong action by Kemi Badenoch, but a massive coup, a big scalp for Reform. Not a former, not a failed, not a defunct politician looking for a way back, but a member of the Shadow Cabinet wanting to join the Reform Party at this time. Well, currently, at this moment, Robert Jenrick is partyless. He's sitting as an independent MP. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think it's a good move for him? Is it good for the Reform Party? Or do you not want Reform to have any more Tories with that, like Richard Tyson and Nigel Farage have often said, that toxic Tory brand? Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Just to let you know what Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, has just said. Although, again, I'm thinking as a Prime Minister, you probably want to leave your enemies to just get on with it. But he's just given a statement saying, why did it take so long? Robert Jenrick has been making toxic comments, dividing our country for months. It's only when he threatened to defect that Kemi got rid of him. It shows weakness. Interesting. Philip Ingram shaking his head to that. I mean, again, lots of the time when Prime Minister gives response to things, it's just very unbecoming.
It's extremely unbecoming, and you're 100% right. The best thing he could have done was said nothing.
No one cares.
Yeah, he's just made himself look stupid, and his indecisions of now, he's highlighted those even more by trying to criticise Kemi Badenoch.
Absolutely.
Kemi Badenoch has been very decisive from finding the evidence to making a decision.
And also, if you're talking about dividing the country, mate.
Oh my God. Yes.
Anyway, let's go to your calls. Phil is in Hertfordshire. Phil, what do you make of this? We think defection, but certainly the sacking by Kemi Badenoch is not in doubt.
Good morning, Julia. Good morning, Philip.
Good morning, Phil.
Good afternoon. I think it's great, isn't it? I mean, Kemi Badenoch saying that it's going to damage the Conservative Party. They're already damaged. Same as the Labour Party. They're like a bit of old mouldy cheese that got pushed at the back of the fridge and forgot. We've moved on from them now. We're looking to the future, and I think that's what Robert's done. He's looked to see, right, who's going to be in power for the next decade or maybe even 2 decades with the complete hash that these two parties have done to this country and what they're doing to its people. You're convinced.
It's a no shadow of a doubt. Reform are in. That's the thing. I would have thought he would have waited until after the Tory elections and seen how bad, how good it is. The public have a habit of surprising pollsters and the media who witter on like I do about these things. If I put someone said, put your home on it, right, I'd absolutely say you're going to have a Reform government next time round. Would it be coalition with the Tories? Would it be on their own? I don't know. But I wouldn't say it's an absolute, because things change. What if something happened to Nigel Farage? I mean, God forbid, he's a friend. God forbid, Nigel Farage was gone. What would happen to the party then? There is a lot that could happen in a few years.
There is a lot that can happen, but I think a lot of Reform voters, we are now looking a little bit deeper into that as well. We're actually looking what the party will do for the country. Okay, you might have Nigel Farage, who's a great leader, but you've got Robert Jenrick, you've got Richard Tice, you've got Lee Anderson, you've got all these politicians. They've got so much experience now. And Richard and Julia, they are for the people. And this is what we want. We want politicians and leaders that are going to be for us. So even if Nigel veered off and went whatever, Whoever's going to step into his place is going to pick up and be exactly the same for the people, not for themselves, for the people. And this is what we want, and I think this is what we'll get.
Very interesting to hear that. You're very happy about it, Phil. Thank you very much. I wonder what Peter in Sussex makes of it. Peter, what do you want to say?
Morning, Julia, or afternoon.
I know everyone had a late night last night.
I mean, I was walking my dog when you broke the news. I'm a admirer of Robert, very much so, and I follow him on Twitter or X, whatever it is. I've been a Tory voter for 46, 47 years, ever since the day I was 17 when Margaret Thatcher in 1979. Yeah. But over the last, since Brexit, it's just been downhill all the way. I mean, we've been promised the world and delivered nothing, you know. Theresa May done her best to destroy the party with all these sort of deals that she's done, locking us in with net zero, whatever. And this Brexit going back and forwards, it was so embarrassing. And I was frustrated. I mean, I know you're a dislike of Boris, but I thought he was a fresh air. But obviously,
he didn't do anything he said he'd do.
No, he didn't, and I was so disappointed. But Kemi, remember her baggage. She was the one in the office was telling everybody on WhatsApp to resign against Boris. Now,
what's wrong with that?
Well, yeah, but it's backhanded. It's all sort of secret little deals. I mean, it all goes on, I know. But going back to Robert, I think if he does go to reform, I think he'll be brilliant. But my favourite of all the reform leaders or members is Layla Cunningham. I think she's strong. She reminds me of Margaret Thatcher.
That's interesting.
Knows what she's talking about. Whenever she's arguing against another person on the panels or whatever show, she knows her brief. She she's British. You know, I don't care what religion she is. She's British.
There's been a big outcry about that. I've been actually quite shocked, and I'm not a little horrified by how many people who claim to be sort of thinkers on the right who've got an issue with someone being a Muslim. I think they're out of touch with the mainstream of British public.
I think what it is, it gets polarised, doesn't it? Yep. With you get some bad apples. There's bad apples in every camp.
People have a problem with Islamist extremists, not with people having a different religion from them.
That's ignorance. That's ignorance on some people that don't, choose between a Muslim and an extremist. Yeah. The thing is, they think, they're both the same. They're not. Yeah. And that's what people have got to come to terms with. These people who are saying, about that Nadine Zanawi, okay, he made a few mistakes, but he's already said that he's not going to be a part of the cabinet. He's going to be business, knowledge and whatever. If that's good, that's great. Yeah. But I trust Nigel. I've never always been, be honest, my hand on heart, I've never always been 100% fan of Nigel. Yeah. He comes over very loud, shouty, but he's a patriot. He believes in this country. It's about time now that the public of all colours, Labour, Tory, whatever, I've got to get behind him and say, look, we've got to put the British people first. Okay. That is the most important thing.
I think that's what a lot of people want, absolutely. So appreciate your call, Peter. Really interesting thoughts on that. Philip Ingram, your response to what you had to say there?
Well, I find it fascinating. Everyone is seeing this from a positive perspective. Again, listening to the intonation of people's voices, they're taking this as extremely positive. I'm going to stick my head in the line here. I think at the next general election, we're going to see either a Tory reform or a reform Tory coalition. Yeah,
that would be, to me, the most likely outcome, I think. Yeah, indeed. We shall wait and see. That's why I love British politics, because again, I don't want it ever to be predictable, because I do just think the British people should always be the people who get the final say.
We like unpredictable, so we can talk about it.
Can I say, I had a great show planned. Had a great show. About last hour and a half, we had a great, really interesting guest. I've got to say we had to drop a lot of it because we've obviously got to talk about the breaking news, but we'll bring you more on that. More top guests coming up. This is Talk.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. If you have just tuned in, breaking news about an hour and 20 minutes ago, Kemi Badenoch, she is, of course, the Conservative Party leader, and she doesn't want someone else to be Conservative Party leader. She has sacked her Shadow Justice Secretary. Of course, you will know him as Robert Jenrick. He is no longer in the Shadow Cabinet, indeed no longer a Tory MP, and no longer even in the Conservative Party. Kemi Badenoch issues a statement on X. Here is what she had to say.
This morning, I removed the Conservative whip from Robert Jenrick after dismissing him from the Shadow Cabinet. I was very sorry to be presented with clear, irrefutable evidence, not just that he was preparing to defect, but he was planning to do so in the most damaging way possible to the Conservative Party and his Shadow Cabinet colleagues. It is my responsibility to protect our party, and faced with that information, I took the only decision that any responsible leader could.
Well, she's certainly sounding very firm. I have to say, not a little angry, it's got to be said. Nigel Farage, he's at a Reform press conference a little bit earlier when this news broke. He was asked about it, said there had been conversations, but certainly a deal hadn't been signed and sealed with Robert Jenrick. Yet to hear from Robert Jenrick, the Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, has said it's only when he threatened to defect that Kemi Badenoch got rid of him. He'd been making toxic comments, dividing our country for months. He says it shows weakness. Not entirely sure the Prime Minister thinks that actually helps him in any way by getting involved in this. But by all accounts, the reason why it was found out that that Robert Jenrick was planning to go was a copy of his resignation speech, apparently in a near final version, had been left lying around. It was expected that he was going to be making a defection, his announcement of his defection, in the next 24 hours. So she acted first. Now, there's no doubt at all this has rather put the clipped the wings of the Reform Party, because this would have been a huge coup. The question is, how much does this damage Kemi Badenoch, losing a front bencher to the Reform challengers, or does it strengthen her in the way she has handled it? And how much does it show perhaps that Robert Jenrick didn't think there was going to be a leadership challenge opportunity after the local elections, given that she's started moving in the right direction, even though very small and very, very slowly in the right direction ahead of those local elections? What does this say about Robert Jenrick? Is this just naked ambition? Or where are we? Is this he doesn't feel the Conservative Party represents him anymore? Will he be seen as yet another defector from the toxic Tory brand? Or, as indeed pretty much everybody who's on the phone so far has been saying to us today, you're welcoming him, saying that actually, this is about everybody with the same viewpoint getting together to oust this government. Love to hear your thoughts. Get in touch. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. James has done just that, and he's in Kent. Hi, James. What do you want to say?
Good morning, Julia.
Good afternoon. Why does everyone think it's morning? It's 12:36, man.
Yeah, you're quite right. But that's a bit of nervous in me because it's the first time I've got a call with you.
Oh, bless you. And I've been horrid.
No,
Go
not
for it.
at all. I've had a call with Ian Collins once or twice, but I'm at the.
Oh, he's much nicer
now. Anyway, Julia, yes, I think, well, a lot of your previous calls has blown wind from themselves to a certain extent, but the same view, same motive. They should run to this and grab the bull by the horns. It's a pivotal moment. The reason why we should run for that is because Jenrick is a Tory. And let's face it, the Reform are a Tory party. We need that sort of inside structure, information, knowledge, call it what you like, just to move the party forward. Now, I'm going to use this as an example. Your previous caller said 46 years, always voted Tory. I'm very similar. I mean, I first put my tick in the box in 83, was true blue, right up to the last election where I said no more. What they did in lockdown was totally un-Tory. They took an economy and destroyed it over, okay, I know people got different views on it, but...
No, I agree with you.
We are where we are. So they have lost their core vote. And the Tories are finished. I think their moment in political history is very much like the Liberals at the beginning of the last century. They're not going to see office for many a year.
Very interesting. The line has always been, that voters have deserted the Tory party, and actually, no, the argument is no, the Conservative Party deserted their own voters. They became a Lib Dem Blairite party. Absolutely. They were Tory light.
all day long. Yes, exactly. So I think Nigel Farage has got to make his mind up. I'm sure he has. I don't think he can afford to prevaricate over this one. I think he's got to take it on and move with it. Now, let's talk about he could be a risk to his leadership. Well, at the end of the day, that's politics. If he wants to be in the high church of being the Prime Minister of this country, he's got to have the right people around him. And Jenrick is a come and get me.
Yeah, absolutely. Really appreciate that call. I hope you're calling again, James. I'm sure more people and myself would love to hear more from you. Philip Ingram, just going to get your response to the latest we're getting out from Stephen. Do follow him on social media. Stephen Winford of the Times. He has his contacts. I'm sitting on air. I can't be making calls to my contacts while I'm on air. I'm speaking with you. But by all accounts, Kemi Badenoch's ambush of Robert Jenrick was carefully planned and deliberately timed for Nigel Farage's press conference while he was on stage in Scotland. All the party leaders have been out there. Rebecca Harris, the Tory chief whip, called Robert Jenrick to tell him he had been sacked, so not even a call from the leader, while Nigel Farage was holding his press conference. Presumably also, therefore, he couldn't get hold of Nigel Farage. At 11:06, moments after Robert Jenrick slammed the phone down after protesting his innocence, Kemi Badenoch announced on X, with that video we've just played, that she was sacking Jenrick with that pre-recorded video. So before he was told by the chief whip that he was sacked, she'd already recorded the video to go out. It meant that Nigel Farage, of course, got questions at the press conference, and that Team Jenrick were basically caught completely unaware, unable to act. Now, we haven't heard anything from Robert Jenrick's people at all. They've gone a bit quiet on WhatsApp, that's for sure. We have had that statement from Kemi Badenoch. Nigel Farage and Richard Tice, let's face it, they're trying to put a brave face on it. It's a big scalp, isn't it, Philip Ingram, to get? But you've been looking at the body language, is what he does. He's a former senior military intelligence officer. But actually, they've been a bit caught on the hoof by this coming out sooner than they wanted it to.
It's a huge scalp, but it's good for the Tories and it's good for reform and it's bad for Labour. And you look at what's going on in the information domain. Kemi Badenoch knew something was coming and she's wrestled the initiative. So she's got the initiative and everyone's talking about how good Kemi is and what she's done and being proactive. What it's done is then it's put reform back up to the headlines again across the whole nation. Nigel Farage was in Scotland going to talk about the reform leader in Scotland. This wasn't a national piece of news, this was a Scottish piece of news. He's now up there with national news, having put that out as well, and there's a lot more coming in.
There's going to be a press conference this afternoon.
So he's lost,
on the back foot.
He's slightly on the back foot, but he's still getting the press bit. And then, of course, we've got the Prime Minister sitting there going, hang on, I'm the Prime Minister, I've got something.
Well, it's interesting you say that. We've just got a clip now. The clip's just come in of Keir Starmer and what he had to say. And I don't know why. I think he keeps making these mistakes. Yeah. He doesn't speak out when we want him to speak out on major issues, and then he puts his tuppence in on some machinations between different political parties. Here's what the Prime Minister had to say.
My question is, why did it take so long? Jenrick's been making toxic comments to try and divide our country for months and months and months. And it's only now, when he's on the verge of defecting to reform, that Badenoch gets round to sacking him. So that's weakness on her part. There's a bigger story here, because we're seeing a flood of Tory politicians, ex-politicians, politicians going across to reform because they know that the Tory party is a sinking ship.
By the way, if you're watching, you will have seen, of course, with the hard hats, he's on a building site. It sounds like it was in the Downing Street canteen, did it not? But there we are.
There's no cake.
Yeah, exactly. What I find fascinating, I mean, it emerged earlier, probably about an hour ago, that the reason why Kemi Badenoch was able to act and take action so quickly on this was they found a copy of Robert Jenrick's resignation speech after it was left lying around, we're told. It was a near final text. He'd cancelled a speaking engagement that was due this weekend, and the expectation was he was going to announce his resignation and his defection in the next 24 hours, so they wanted to act first. This has definitely clipped the wings of Robert Jenrick, because depending on what the conversation has been with Nigel Farage said yes, he has had private conversations. He'd been seen having conversations with Nigel Farage in Parliament, and this won't be a hello chap, how are you, would you want a gin and tonic with other people there? This would have been private conversations, now made very public, it would appear. But the negotiation position you've got as a shadow Justice Secretary, a rival for the Tory leadership for Kemi Badenoch, when you're trying to defect to the party, for what you're going to get in return and the role you're going to have, that's strong. He is now a partyless, jobless, well, he's still an MP, a Tory. He is prominent, But in Westminster, maybe not as much, although a lot of his online clips about tackling people on the tube, not paying their fares.
We're talking what 90 minutes worth of being out of his position on the shadow cabinet, and if there's an announcement this afternoon that he goes to reform, that's less than 24 hours where he's been jobless, so he's still got the profile.
But but in terms of his negotiating position with Nigel Farage,
I think he's almost certainly negotiated with Nigel Farage what's going on. It's just the wings have been clipped. They've lost the initiative, but it's not doing reform any harm because it's getting them to the top of the news.
Again,
and that's what
this is the thing I find
again
fascinating. Keir Starmer every single week at PMQs, and he just goes on and on about reform.
And Kemi Badenoch has wrestled the initiative, so it's got her to the top of the news. So she's coming out of this smelling.
Here's the thing.
Reformer coming out smelling well, and the Prime Minister's statement. Oh my goodness!
I know. It's just you can't hack it. She's lost a rival. Everyone's sitting there going, if you don't do well in the next local elections, as even the Tory peer and pollster Robert was talking to us, Robert Hay was talking to us a little bit earlier. Everyone's saying, well, Robert Jenrick was the obvious, the challenger. Well, he's gone. She's in a much stronger position today, isn't she? Very interestingly. Let's take more of your calls quickly. Martin is on the line in Rotherhithe and wants to have his say. Hello, Martin. What do you think of this announcement?
Afternoon, Julia. How are you?
Doing very well. Thank you for knowing the time of day. She said after about a year of saying good morning to people. But anyway, what do you want to say?
Yeah, I'm a reform voter, and as looks likely, I'm very happy that Robert Jenrick's going to defect, and I would imagine this afternoon in that press conference he'll be there. I would imagine, but
get your helicopter right now.
Yeah. What it also represents for me is I suspect it's now going to show. People like Suella Braverman, who I now fully expect to defect to Reform UK. There's no denying that. I mean, if Robert Jenrick is going to go, I doubt she's going to be the last one left in the Tories that are sort of reform-friendly, if you know what I mean.
I'm amazed she hasn't gone already, actually.
I know.
Her husband has, hasn't he? Ago. I mean, OK, why do you think that Robert Jenrick wanted to defect, and why do you think he wanted to defect now?
Well, firstly, there's obviously a naked ambition is in it. I mean, we all see a bit of that. But also, it doesn't take a lot of listening to when he speaks. The guy is reform. He just is. There's a difference now in British politics on the right. You can tell pretty quickly if somebody's a Tory or if they're reform. And he's clearly reform, just like Suella Braverman. Yeah. I mean, she, as I already said, she will be next, I suspect.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be very interesting. But again, there's a difference between a former Home Secretary who's not in the shadow cabinet and someone in the shadow cabinet. Do you think that Kemi Badenoch has handled this well?
She's done what she had to do. I mean, you kind of have to take the initiative as a leader in these.
In fact, you're trying to think, what is the alternative? Once they saw that draft resignation letter, if that's what happened. I'm not quite sure what else you could do in that scenario.
She has no choice. But for her, this is actually a good thing because it probably now guarantees her position as leader of the party long term because her main rival's gone. And I can't really think of anybody else in the Tory party now that could actually succeed her.
I tell you who's going to be fancying his chances. James Cleverly's fancying his chances right now.
No chance.
I know, but he is fancying his chances. Martin, really interesting call. Thank you very much indeed. I'd like to point out that my callers on this show and on our station generally, I think they've got better political analysis than a lot of the abject nonsense you actually hear, not just from people talking heads on other shows, but also it's a lot of the stuff written in newspapers.
Oh, very much so. We're not just the home of common sense. We attract people with common sense.
Ta-da! Who knew that? Yeah, exactly. And you.
Oh, do I fit into that bracket? Oh, no.
But that's really interesting. I mean, again, I think Kemi Badenoch's been pretty rude, but again, I can't see what else you would do in this scenario.
She had no other option, but she's played it very well. She's played it blinder. This is all about initiative in the information domain. She's got it. Nigel's benefiting from it, and it'll go on longer. And Keir Starmer is just fizzling away.
Still there. Still there. 12:47 is the time. We'll take a quick break. This is Talk. breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
Something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a talk exclusive we've been looking at.
I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, do these people who lead us actually hate Britain? Yeah. Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Is Talk. Look, we've got lots of talk guests. We had a whole show planned. This extraordinary news coming out at about 11:10 that Kemi Badenoch had sacked the Shadow Justice Director Robert Jenrick because he was plotting to resign in the next 24 hours to defect to reform. That has really set the cat among the pigeons. I'm afraid there are so many calls from you wanting to have your say. I want to make sure you're going to have your say. So keep them coming in. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. We've been playing you some of those clips with Kemi Badenoch and Nigel Farage. Yet to hear from Robert Jenrick himself. Just looking on WhatsApp, you know, you can normally see when someone is like, is someone actually on WhatsApp? Oh, they doesn't seem to be there. Seem to be perhaps a little bit busy wondering what he's doing. Or I don't know, maybe he's chartering a helicopter right now to try and get up to Scotland to do a joint press conference with Nigel Farage. It's where he is in Scotland right now. He was planning to do a press conference. Well, he did one this morning with a new Scottish Reform leader. That's where he was basically hijacked by journalists saying, hello, have you just heard that Robert Jenrick's been sacked and is he defected to your party? But he was also planning a press conference this afternoon about the local elections being cancelled, basically, which are going to harm the Labour Party and in some cases the Tory Party as well, and local councils being allowed to cancel those elections. Who would have been the big winner? It would have been Reform, of course, but now it's all going to be about Robert Jenrick and that plotting. So we shall see what happens there. Now let's go to your calls. Graham is on the line. He's in Kent. Graham, what do you make of this news? Do you welcome it? Do you not welcome it? What do you want to say?
No, I've got an alternative opinion to throw to you. I think this further weakens a weak opposition in Parliament. If you look at how Starmer deals with Prime Minister question time now, he never answers any questions. He has his little jokes, and pathetic jokes sometimes. Yeah, and also he has a free shy at Farage when this guy is going to probably give the Chinese a big embassy, and he's going over to China in a few weeks' time, maybe to sell away our future. I think it's dangerous news. The guy's got to be opposed.
Yeah, but he does. But you know, here's the thing. I mean, the Prime Minister's there. The question is, can they be ousted? There is every possibility at the next election that a divided right means that Labour can get back in again with a decent majority and or in a coalition with the Lib Dems, the Greens, and they may all hate each other, but come the day you can actually be in power. Those red boxes and those chauffeur-driven cars are and those big salaries as cabinet ministers, those are very enticing. There is this talk about, you know, they need the right, they need reform, need the Tories to actually unite on the right. A lot of people, a lot of callers are saying, look, you know, Robert Jenrick and Nigel Farage, they'll share the same views. They should be in the same party.
Yeah, and that's true, and I can understand that. But we've got 3.5 years of this guy left. What damage can he do to our country? And he's not a democratic politician, in my opinion.
I agree with you.
He doesn't really like criticism or anything like that.
Well, he tried to overturn the biggest democratic vote this country's ever had.
Yeah, I think it just weakens the opposition. I'd like to see him taken. He is a punch-drunk boxer. He needs one good punch and he'll make him look stupid and he'll go. And I think, you know, this further weakens the opposition.
Yeah, well, you say he'd go. Careful what you wish for, because we'd end up with Ed Miliband as Prime Minister, God forbid. Graham, thank you for that. Let's go to Carl. He's in Liverpool. Carl, what do you want to say?
Good afternoon, Julia.
Afternoon.
Yeah, I think it's a good move for reform. It's a good move for Robert Jenrick. It was bound to happen sooner or later. But you've had a lot of people over this week moaning about how many Tories are joining.
Yeah,
we are getting the best of them. I mean, some people may argue, but we want the best of them. And where do people expect these experienced politicians to come from?
This is the interesting thing.
To get a government.
And especially, I remember calling yesterday, apologies, I can't remember his name, but he said, look, I'm a former long-time Tory voter and I'm now in Reform, but I don't accept a Tory politician joining Reform. But it's like, well, hold on a minute. So it's okay for the voters to switch, but not the politicians.
Yeah, it's silly. I think it's silly, really. People should just stand fast and just, it's all going to come to a head. The Tories are going to come over as long as we get the good ones. Like Richard Tice said earlier, there is a strict sort of a recruitment policy. I can't see anything but good coming from this. It'll be strong enough to take on the next general election and all will be good.
OK, thank you very much indeed, Carl. Thank you for that. Still with me is Philip Ingram, former senior military intelligence officer. One of my favourite things of the show today was watching your face when Richard Tice was on the line. We'd already booked him to talk about the local elections and other stories, and you were saying, I'd like to play poker with him because there were so many tells. I asked him at one point, you were out of the loop. Did you not know there were these talks going on? I'm pretty sure he wouldn't know what was going on. He and Farage are very, very close. Yeah. But let's have watch and listen once again of what Nigel Farage said when he was asked about Robert Jenrick and had he been in talks with him for him to defect to Reform. Here's what Nigel Farage had to say.
I'm very surprised that this news is broken.
Are you, though?
Well, I never reveal private conversations with anybody. I'm going to say that I've had conversations with a number of very senior Conservatives over the course of the last week, over the course of the last month. Of course, I've talked to Robert Jenrick. Was I on the verge of signing a document with him? No. But have we had conversations? Yes.
So he was considering leaving the Conservatives and joining Reform UK?
I think virtually every Conservative is considering leaving the Conservatives, yes.
I mean, it's very telling, that, isn't it? He plays games. He does it very well. But...
He does, but Nigel was giving things away. Of course, he's a conversation with him. I wasn't on the verge of signing a document. Does he need to sign a document with him? No.
I think that's a phrase, isn't it? Sign this up. But again, I do think this does undermine the position of Robert Jenrick in terms of you're out of your own party. You haven't got a job there. It's the fact what I find fascinating about this is not waiting for the local elections for him to be so convinced that his chances of being Tory party leader after the next local elections, and Labour and the Tories, being wiped out in local elections across England and in Welsh Assembly and in Scotland, that then he could then be the alternative leader, and that he could turn the party around. He must have calculated that he doesn't have a future, that's not going to happen. Well, and is that because Kemi Badenoch is a little bit stronger now?
Yeah, I think it could be because Kemi Badenoch's a little bit stronger. I think he may have calculated that actually the Tories haven't got a future, and therefore it's better that he goes into Tory 2, Reform Party.
Which realistically is. People saying we don't. Again, it does depend which Tory. A lot of people saying we don't want your failures and your the ones who've been ousted. But talking of failures, David Lammy. What's his job this week? Justice Secretary. Well, he was being shadowed by Robert Jenrick. He's gone on to X, formerly known as Twitter. He says that Kemi Badenoch's claim that Robert Jenrick was about to defect shows the Tories and Reform UK are one of the same. He says this latest revolving door defection proves that Kemi Badenoch's Conservatives are one of the same. The parties of division, decline and easy answers. Yeah, thanks, David. Carry on as you were. Go and be rude to a French taxi driver and just plan again to be on Mastermind. Delighted to say Ian Collin joins us now. Yeah. What a morning!
What a morning! You love these moments, don't you?
Do you know what? I do love breaking news.
They're great moments. I was just on the train coming in when the Jenrick story kind of broke, but everyone's got, he's had a meeting with Farage. It's clearly Reform. It isn't Reform, I can tell you that. It's the Your Party, Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana.
That would be funny.
Sultana's just put out a statement. We welcome Robert or Bob, as I call him, she says. Welcome him into the fold. Looking forward to doing business with him.
That is not true. We're going to be accused of fake news. That is fake news. I thought Monster Raving Looney Party or the Greens, but they're the same thing.
You see, with Jenrick was quite personable. He came in here a lot. He spoke with you, he spoke with me, and he was always very nice. And, he obviously got himself...
he tackles people on the tube.
Tried to get himself a bit fit and, went into the gym, shed a few pounds, etc., to look the part. I never really thought he was the part. I never thought he you know, that little missing thing you need for the big job. I'm not sure Kemi has it either in bucket loads, but I thought he.
Well, Keir Starmer doesn't, and look at him in number 10.
He has none of it.
This is the fascinating thing, you know. But do you think this shores up Kemi Badenoch or weakens her?
No, actually, I think it, because we were asking the question, you know, who wins